and want to offer Chun-Hu's body. Where is Chun-Hu's body? What's the point of just talking? Their people can't even get close to the periphery of our Xiangqing base. So, what sincerity can we talk about? Reply to Chu Xiang, don't ask for peace or not. Hurry up and prepare for the battle. I will be out of confinement soon. Let Chu Xiang clean up his mess and prepare to face my wrath. Seeing Huami rejected the olive branch thrown by Chu Xiang so harshly and bluntly, Qin Jin also nodded in agreement. She breathed a sigh of relief. I was just worried that you would be soft-hearted. Now I am relieved. After she walked out of Huami's ward, Qin Jin said directly to the person who delivered the message, I will not reply to Chu Xiang. You can reply on my behalf. We refuse to make peace. After a pause, Qin Jin continued, forget it. There's no need to reply to him. Just let the East City base worry about it. There's really no point in engaging in a war of words. Qin Jin has too many things to do now and has no time to argue with Chu Xiang. Due to the silence of the Xiangqing base, Chu Xiang waited for 2 days and finally couldn't bear it anymore and called Qin Jin's mobile phone himself. However, before Chu Xiang finished introducing himself, Qin Jin spoke directly and said in a cold voice, Mr. Chu, you don't have to be so nice now. Our Ami said that you forced our Xiangqing base into this state in the beginning. It doesn't make sense now that you will let things go so simply. I want to give Master Chu a sincere word of advice. This matter from beginning to end cannot be blamed entirely on Chun-Hu. Even if Chun-Hu dies, isn't there still Master Chu? Chu Xiang was on the other end of the phone, wishing he could follow the signal and burn Qin Jin to death. He opened his mouth to say more, but Qin Jin hung up the phone. This attitude of rejection is already very obvious. Xiangqing base is unwilling to pay attention to East City base. Even if the East City base is so humble, so what? You can't stab someone again and then apologize sincerely, pretending that you never stabbed them, right? How can there be such a cheap thing in this world? Qin Jin even doubted Chu Shiheng's IQ. Could it be that this young master has never thought about the meaning of the saying you're responsible for the consequences of your own actions? What's the point of apologizing now? Chu Xiang was so angry that his teeth were itching. After Qin Jin hung up the phone on him, he burned the phone in his hand. After it was burned, Chu Xiang remembered that there was a universal signal connector on the back of the phone. Now that supplies in Xiangqing have been sealed off, it is quite difficult for survivors to obtain a universal signal connector. Such a magical artifact, if one is destroyed, there will be one less. He slammed his fist on the table in frustration, and a black fist mark was immediately burned on the table. Chu Xiang thought it was really abominable. Why didn't East City have sufficient supplies? Why was Xiangqing base so selfish and occupied so many supplies? Not only did he occupy so many supplies, he also gave Xiangqing a sincere apology. In order to apologize, Chu Xiang also killed Chun-Hu. As a result, Huami and Qin Jin still refused to give in, especially the one named Qin Jin, who even said such words to mock him. Does Qin Jin think he is so great just because he is the second in command of Xiangqing? No matter how amazing she is just a woman. He was in a very angry mood and hadn't come up with a solution yet. A man with a dignified look on his face walked out from outside the tent. Chu Shiheng's heart skipped a beat, and he quickly stood up with a hint of respect on his face. Uncle. S. Tent was one of the few elders in the Chu family. It is said that most of the supplies of the Chu family are in the hands of this uncle. But no one knows exactly where the supplies are. Even Chu Xiang didn't know. They would only ask their uncle to give them some when they needed it. Normally, my uncle kept the location of these supplies a secret. Because of this uncle has a lot of say in the East City base. As soon as the uncle entered the tent, he said to Chu Xiang with a stern face, "Do you know that many people died in the East City base again? Although it's not a pity that these people died, the living environment in the East City base is getting worse and worse. If you can't find a way to improve the living environment of East City base and make it better, your uncles and I would like to contact Xiangqing base and move in." Chu Xiang said hurriedly, "But uncle, there are zombies all over the outside of Xiangqing base. It's not a very wise choice for you to move into Xiangqing base. Uncle Chu couldn't help but sneer. How can you say that? You have seen Xiangqing's strength during this period. What did you say some time ago? You said that Xiangqing would definitely be destroyed by zombies in a short period of time, and that Xiangqing would definitely release a large amount of supplies. But look at it yourself. Is it destroyed?
No.
Don't think we don't know what you and Chen Hu did to Xiangqing some time ago. You must resolve this matter as soon as possible, and be sure to obtain the forgiveness of the Xiangqing base, and have all your uncles and aunts move into the Xiangqing base. Although the Chu family, like Chen Hu's family, lost many people after the end of the world. A huge family has declined to the point where only a few people are left. But a lean camel is bigger than a horse. Even if such a big family is in decline, it is still inferior to those ordinary families where not a single person is left. The Chu family still has a considerable population base. Of course, there are many people with supplies among this population base. In fact, Chu Xing himself didn't know exactly how much supplies these uncles of the Chu family had in their hands. After all, before the end of the world, the Chu family was in the transportation business. Land, air, and sea transport. They have people in every aspect. If you control transportation, you will naturally control the storage of supplies. The Chu family indeed had no shortage of supplies, just as Chen Hu had said. The one who has been lacking supplies has always been the East City base, and that is Chu Xing. There is a big difference between the two. Because of this relationship, Chu Xing had no way of breaking off relations with these uncles. He could only suppress his temper and said to his uncle, "Our relationship with Xiangqing base is very strained now. If you want to move into Xiangqing base, it will be very difficult. And the Xiangqing base has been closed. They don't allow outsiders to enter the Xiangqing base." The uncle waved his hand nonchalantly. "You will need to go and apologize to Xiangqing. I've said before that you need to be humble and sincere. If Huami of Xiangqing base does not forgive what you did, then you must show more sincerity. Do you understand what we mean? We no longer have any expectations for the development of E-City, so if you can't satisfy us, we won't provide you with follow-up materials to build the E-City base." The dangerous implication in these words is already quite strong. Originally, Chu Xing wanted to build the E-City base, but his uncles and aunts in the family had different opinions on this. At the beginning, my uncles and aunts in the family actually brought it up. They can actually provide some supplies to the Xiangqing base. Although the Xiangqing base may not look down on the batch of supplies they provided as support, but at least the Chu family showed their sincerity. They can move their entire family to the Xiangqing base. But Chu Xing stopped them. Chu Shiheng's reason was very simple. He said that the Xiangqing base was about to be surrounded by zombies. He urged his uncles to stay here and use the supplies in their hands to make the city base bigger and stronger. Of course, everyone can see that Chu Xing is a very ambitious person. He wants to be first. As long as the Xiangqing base is destroyed by zombies, the E-City base will definitely be the #1 base in the apocalypse. In this regard, the uncles and aunts of the Chu family also believed that it was a good thing for young people to be energetic.
Times have changed.
They must adapt to the times and always take off at the forefront of the trend, so they naturally need support. But after supporting it until now, the E-City base is in this terrible state. How can this become bigger and stronger and become the #1 base in the apocalypse?
Don't joke about that.
The uncle's intention now is very simple, that is, Chu Xing should keep a low profile and make peace with the Xiangqing base. Even if we cannot make peace, we must make peace. Because they were going to live in the Xiangqing base, pressure was put on Chu Xing. Chu Xing must be asked to find a solution. After saying this, the uncle patted his ace and left. Chu Xing stayed in his tent again, feeling helpless and furious for a long time. He has no supplies in his hands now. If he had supplies, why would he bother to deal with these old men of the Chu family? Those old men don't know a thing. They hold supplies in their hands as if they were holding some imperial sword. Everyone held him hostage, wanting him to do what they wanted. How could it be so good? If it were so easy to make peace with Xiangqing, it wouldn't be so difficult for Chu Xing. After a tantrum, Chu Xing calmed down. He gritted his teeth and decided that this matter could not be let go so easily. He still has to find a way to continue to make peace with Xiangqing. For a while, Chu Xiang was in a stalemate. He didn't know how to make peace with the Xiangqing base. So, he called an acquaintance in the Xiangqing base and asked that acquaintance to find Gong Yi's contact information for him. Chu Xing thought clearly that he would not be able to get through to Qin Zhen. After all, Qin Zhen had even blocked his contact information. Qin Zhen is Hua Mi's man, and every decision Qin Zhen makes represents Hua Mi's opinion. Chu Xing knew this a long time ago. Then wouldn't it be better to go find Gong Yi directly? The Xiangqing base belongs to Gong Yi, who is Hua Mi's husband and the father of her 2 children. If Gong Yi chose to forgive, then even if Hua Mi hated him, so what? He still had to choose to forgive. Gong Yi's contact information is not difficult to find. After all, he had worked in the rescue team for a period of time before, and his phone number is known to many people. But as time went on, and many people died, no one called Gong Yi anymore. The people who had the most contact with Gong Yi were his garrison and Hua Mi. After receiving a call from Chu Xiang, Gong Yi looked at the unfamiliar number and felt quite surprised. When he picked up the phone, he found that the person calling him was Chu Xiang. Gong Yi frowned and asked in a lukewarm voice, "I really didn't expect you to be so shameless that you would even call me. What's the matter? Chu Xiang, do you think you've lived too long?" As for Chu Xiang and Chen Hu, they took advantage of Hua Mi's opportunity and forced Xiangqing into desperate situations time and time again while Hua Mi was giving birth. Gong Yi is only more irritable than Hua Mi, not less. Chu Xiang was on the other end of the phone, trying hard to suppress his anger, smiling and laughing twice. What is Commander Gong saying? We who accomplish great things don't pay attention to small details. Isn't everything fine at your Xiangqing base now? I'm here to apologize with 1,000,000 points of sincerity. Let's just let this matter go. After all, Chen Hu is dead now, so this misunderstanding should be written off. Our 2 bases must help each other. In this apocalypse, we must protect the survivors and help the survivors in the base survive better. Gong Yi on the other end of the phone didn't speak. Chu Xiang continued, "In such a difficult living environment, one more friend is always better than one more enemy. What do you think, Commander Gong? Back then, your wife cut off one of my ears, and I frightened your wife when she was giving birth. This matter is between you and me, so let's call it even." If Commander Gong continues to care about this, it would seem like he is not a man enough. As soon as he finished speaking, Gong Yi sneered on the other end of the phone. "Are you trying to pue me? Can your one ear be compared with my wife and my 2 children? The entire apocalypse combined cannot compare to my wife and children. Perhaps this world is too sad." In Gong Yi's mind, his value system has been shattered time and time again. After collapse again and again, Gong Yi picked up the worldview and values again and reshaped them. His inner value system has changed. He now feels that nothing can compare to his wife and children. He could lose his life for his wife and children. What kind of person is Chu Xiang? Not to mention his ear, even his life is worthless. Chu Xiang continued to persuade him. Then Commander Gong, you can't just watch so many survivors of our East City base lose their lives. You are also a garrison. Where is your professional ethics? Although you cannot forgive my mistakes, there are still so many survivors in the East City base. I hope to get enough supplies to save the few survivors. Am I wrong? No matter what, we have to be responsible for the people in this city, right? Speaking of which, Chu Xiang appointed himself the position of Commander-in-Chief of East City. In fact, before the end of the world, he wasn't even a city administrator. Gong Yi was also the Commander-in-Chief of Xiangqing. As a commander should talk to another commander, he had no right to talk to Gong Yi about whether to forgive him or not. He is now talking with Gong Yi about feelings and justice. Gong Yi sneered. His laughter was full of sarcasm. Are you teaching me how to do things now? East City is now like this, and it's not our Xiang City that caused it. On the contrary, it is your East City that caused our Xiang City to become like this now. You don't have to talk to me here. You have to be responsible for the people in the city. Before you say such things, you should first find a way to solve the problems in your East City base. Perhaps it was because he had seen too much sadness in the world. Gong Yi gradually felt that in fact, to survive in the end times, perhaps living well in his own little piece of land was the wisest choice. He only has a total of 5,000 garrisons. In fact, these 5,000 garrisons are barely enough to guard such a large Xiangqing base. What else can he manage? Manage the entire apocalypse? Sorry, he really doesn't have that much power. Just assume that he is an incompetent man. He has already tried his best to defend Xiangqing. I also sacrificed too much time to spend with my wife and children. The garrisons under his command also tried their best, and each garrison member worked as if he were 10 men. In this regard, Gong Yi is not worthy of everyone except his wife and children. Chu Xing on the other end of the phone had something else to say. However, Gong Yi felt that there was no need to continue the conversation. His voice was sharp, and he said to Chu Xing, "What you should be most grateful for right now is this world. If it weren't for the chaos in this world, how long do you think you could live now?" After saying this, Gong Yi hung up the phone with Chu Xing and blocked Chu Shiheng's number. He was also not very willing to continue talking to Chu Xing. What's the point of talking about this now? The seeds of hatred have been sown, and now we just need to wash them clean and wait for death. Chu Xing rarely heard a chilling tone between the lines of Gong Yi's words. He felt more and more that this could not go on. So I quickly called Hu Yanxiang. "Did you pick up my sister?" Hu Yanxiang was rushing to where Chu Yimin was. After learning Hu Yanxiang's location, Chu Xing gave Hu Yanxiang a clear order. "After picking up my sister, take her to the north of Xiangqing base to find Gong Yi. I don't care what method Chu Yimin uses to get Gong Yi's forgiveness. Anyway, I must make Gong Yi turn this matter from hostility to friendship." Hu Yanxiang held the phone and kept saying, "Yes, yes, yes." After hanging up the phone with Chu Xing, the man next to Hu Yanxiang asked, "What did Chu Xing say?" "He wants to use his sister and offer her to Gong Yi so that he can become a relative of Gong Yi." Hu Yanxiang pursed his lips and glanced at the man who said this. He snorted coldly. "What's the use of that? It's of no use at all. Now the emperor is far away. Where Chu Yimin goes, who she follows, whose woman she becomes, does Chu Xing have any right to control it?" It was indeed out of their control. They soon arrived at the small gathering place of survivors where Chu Yimin was. At this time, Chu Yimin's cell phone had little battery left. The destination of this group of survivors is towards City F. The members are mostly men, but there are also a few women. Chu Yimin didn't want to reiterate what these men would do to these women. She could only say that she was in danger now. The further away from Xiangqing base, the more dangerous her situation becomes. So when she first met Hu Yanxiang, Chu Yimin extended her hand to him in an imperative tone. "Do you have a power bank? Give it to me quickly, I need to charge my phone." In fact, during this period, Chu Yimin regretted her impulsive behavior more than once. It's easy to tear up the ticket and fly to the Xiangqing base, but it is quite difficult to return to City Yi. Not to mention that he had to circle around Xiangqing, from the west of Xiangqing to the north of Xiangqing to find Gong Yi. The eldest lady finally discovered the cruelty of reality. She just wanted to go back to the East City base and ask her brother for the person. Wait until she has enough people and let the bodyguards protect her before heading towards the north of Xiangqing. But Hu Yanxiang seemed to have not heard Chu Yimin's order at all. He looked at the rusty car behind Chu Yimin, then looked at the men and women not far away, either inside or outside the car. Hu Yanxiang smiled and was in a generally good mood. He asked Chu Yimin, "Young lady, have you been moving around with these people these days? Did they bully you? How did you survive?" Chu Yimin frowned and looked at Hu Yanxiang. "Why are you talking so much? Do you have a power bank with you? If you have one, give me the power bank quickly. My phone is out of battery." These days, she has suffered a lot from the shortage of supplies. A very simple one is that she has to keep changing her mobile phones, constantly removing the SIM cards and universal signal connectors from her original phones and replacing them with new ones, because a mobile phone will run out of battery very quickly. However, what Chu Yimin did not expect was that the farther away from the Xiangqing base, the scarcer the supplies became. Now I can't even find a charged cell phone. Even if she wanted to change her SIM card, there was no way she could do that with the universal signal connector. She used the last bit of power in the mobile phone in her hand to contact Hu Yanxiang. After contacting Hu Yanxiang, Chu Yimin's mobile phone was completely out of power. At this moment, her cell phone was out of battery, which meant that she had completely lost contact with her brother Chu Xiang. This huge feeling of insecurity enveloped Chu Yimin. Her cell phone was out of battery, and she had lost contact with everyone at home. Chu Yimin felt like she was trapped in an extremely dark and desperate situation. What was around her? Where was she going? What land was she in? She had no idea. Chu Yimin had never felt so helpless before. Thinking back to the beginning, she rashly and bravely flew to the Xiangqing base. He thought he could enter the Xiangqing base. As long as she had money, she could enjoy the abundant supplies and convenience brought to her in the Xiangqing base. However, she didn't expect that she would be stranded outside and couldn't even find a power bank. Hu Yanxiang smiled and did not answer Chu Yimin's question. He took Chu Yimin with him and forced her into the car with an almost tough attitude. Then the car drove away. Chu Yimin felt that something was not right. She couldn't put her finger on it. She just felt a sense of insecurity and loss of control enveloping her. This made her quite uneasy. Especially since she was a rich lady, she was not sitting in the passenger seat but in the back seat of the car. She wasn't alone in the back seat of the car. On the contrary, there were two other men sitting there. Chu Yimin patted the back of Hu Yanxiang's chair. She was dissatisfied. "Let me get off the car. Please let me get off the car quickly."
Where are you taking me?
"I don't want to go with you." Hu Yanxiang had already sent a car to take Chu Yimin away from the gathering place of survivors. The car had already left and no one tried to stop them. Hu Yanxiang then said to Chu Yimin, who was sitting in the back seat of the car with an angry look on her face, "If you don't follow me, who do you want to follow? Stay here and be the chicken of this team? Nowhere is safe, young lady." Chu Yimin also knew that the small gathering place for survivors where she was now was not safe either. Ever since her bodyguards died, one by one, Chu Yimin just realized that the men around her, whether they knew her or not, looked at her as if she were a commodity. Chu Yimin had no doubt that if she stayed in this group, her situation would be miserable. So, when her cell phone had power, she kept calling Chu Xiang. Ask Chu Xiang to send someone to rescue her. But the person sent by Chu Xiang was Hu Yanxiang. This made Chu Yimin quite dissatisfied. Don't think that she didn't know what Hu Yanxiang had in mind for her. Her brother sent such a man to save her, especially when Chu Yimin's cell phone was out of battery. She didn't know whether her brother was doing this for her good or for her bad. The car kept moving forward, and Chu Yimin didn't know where their car was heading. The two men sitting next to her didn't speak either. After the car had been driving for a while, it entered a relatively safe but very chaotic and remote place. The car stopped. With great panic in her heart, Chu Yimin watched Hu Yanxiang get out of the car. She raised her hand in horror and pulled the door handle of the car. In the narrow space, Chu Yimin tilted her head and looked at the two men sitting next to her. The two men had lewd smiles on their faces, but they did not do anything to Chu Yimin. Instead, get off from the other side of the car. Chu Yimin also wanted to get out of the car, but one side of the door was opened. Hu Yanxiang got into the car. Chu Yimin and Hu Yanxiang were the only two people left in the car. Chu Yimin yelled at Hu Yanxiang, "Do you know who I am? My brother is Chu Xiang. We have an East City base in our Chu family. You can send me to the East City base safely now, or send me to Gongyi. My brother and Gongyi will definitely give you a lot of supplies." She had no relationship with Gongyi, but now she could only bring up Gongyi to scare Hu Yanxiang. "But if you touch me now, my brother and Gongyi will definitely kill you, and make your life worse than death. If you don't believe me, just try it." Hu Yanxiang grinned. She was not good-looking. On the contrary, she was big and strong. When she opened her mouth, she had a mouthful of yellow teeth. Because people did not pay attention to hygiene in the apocalypse, when Hu Yanxiang opened his mouth to speak, a strong smell of bad breath came out of his mouth. A feeling of disgust rose in Chu Yimin's heart. But immediately, she screamed in fear and felt that Hu Yanxiang was pouncing towards her like an ugly beast. What else is there to understand? The car is constantly vibrating. Screams came from the car. The three men standing outside the car, observing whether there were any zombies around, let out a smug and ambiguous laugh. One of them said jokingly, "Our brother, who is still capable. Once we have trained this young lady well enough, we will go back to the East City base. Now, Miss Chu Yimin still has a bad temper. She is not obedient enough yet. Apparently, she has not been tortured enough and needs to be tamed." Darkness gradually enveloped the land. Despair takes root in people's hearts, and the survivors will eventually find that perhaps as time goes by, the end of the world will become longer and longer. In fact, it would have been better to follow the Xiangqing base and take a gamble. If we help Xiangqing base overcome difficulties, Xiangqing base will not isolate itself. Maybe the whole world will not become worse. At least more and more people now realize the importance of the Xiangqing base to them. Compared with today, when the Xiangqing base was still open, human nature was far less bad. But the world is collapsing too fast. No matter how proud a person was before the end of the world, after the end of the world, they gradually became the same. That is, in order to survive, one has to show the ugly, selfish, and most despicable side of human nature. Hu Yanxiang, that beast, treated her like an object. At this time, Chu Yimin was no longer the eldest daughter of the Chu family in the East City base. She was just a tool for Hu Yanxiang to climb up the ladder. No matter how difficult life was in the outside world, people living in the Xiangqing base still had a sense of happiness. But there are not many people left in the Xiangqing base. When the Xiangqing base was attacked from all sides by the East City base, many people said that the Xiangqing base could not hold on. So, everyone ran outside the Xiangqing base. This is also the main reason why Xiangqing base West and Xiangqing base North attract so many zombies. These zombies are all chasing after popularity. After the results came out, I could never go back to the Xiangqing base. Even if they took the teleportation ticket and flew back to the isolation area of Xiangqing base, it would be useless. The survivors suddenly discovered that the quarantine area had been transformed beyond recognition. The road leading to the observation area of the Xiangqing base was firmly sealed with cement. The concrete wall is 10 meters high and was built entirely according to the specifications of a city wall. The existing city walls of the Xiangqing base are also being built higher bit by bit. Although there are not many people left in the Xiangqing base, except for women and children, the number of young men who insisted on living and dying with Xiangqing is extremely limited. But because of this, the survivors in the Xiangqing base are not short of jobs. There are many jobs but few survivors, so the treatment for these jobs is simply too good to be true. Huami still lives in the emergency area and is recuperating there after giving birth. She counted the days and saw that there were only a few days left in the confinement period. As the day of her confinement drew closer, Chu Xing became more and more anxious. During this period of time, Chu Xing tried every possible way to contact the Xiangqing base. He wanted to find the possibility of reconciliation from the people around Huami. But the people around Huami would never go against her wishes just for Chu Xing. So the first time they received a call from Chu Xing, they would hang up the phone. Whether it is a Kegawa or Afu's family, there is no reconciliation in this matter. All they can do is continue to hate each other. In the ward, when Huami closed her eyes and dozed off, a doctor in a white coat entered her ward. Huami was lying down to rest, her ears moved, and when the doctor approached her two babies, Huami suddenly opened her eyes. She sat up from the bed, her eyes cold as she looked at the doctor wearing a mask. "I advise you not to do anything to my two children. If they get even a little scared, I promise you'll regret showing up here." Maybe it was because the cargo had been unloaded. Huami's supernatural powers were no longer suppressed. Not only is her hearing and eyesight sharp now, but her 5 senses have also become much sharper. Obviously, the doctor did not show any abnormality, but Huami felt that something was wrong with this doctor. The doctor standing not far from the blue light box smiled awkwardly. He took 2 steps back, stood at a distance that Huami thought was safe, and then took off the mask on his face. He said to Huami, "Miss Hua, allow me to introduce myself. I am Lin Jigang from F City. My father is the Chief Administrative Officer of F City. We are sincere and would like to talk to Miss Hua." Lin Jigang said this, raising his hands, trying hard to express his harmlessness to Huami. Seeing Huami pursed her lips and said nothing. He slowly moved his body and, under Huami's sharp gaze, moved to the sofa at the end of the bed. Lin Jigang sat down and said to Huami, "I came here without any ill intentions. It's just because the management of Xiangqing is too tough. The management is also very loose, and we don't know who to turn to. My father had no choice but to send me to come and talk to you. It is true that Lin Jigang is a doctor, and he has been in Xiangqing for more than half a year. Because of his superb medical skills, Lin Jigang was specially kept in the medical center by Ke Minghong. However, Ke Minghong had no idea that Lin Jigang's real identity was the son of the F-City management commander." Huami bent one leg, and Lokia continued to flow out from her body. "It doesn't matter. It doesn't stop her from killing people. Do you know that just before you, a nurse died in front of me? She is also a real nurse. People have many faces. People like you. Why don't you live well and cherish the opportunity to live? You have to come to me and take off your mask yourself." Huami was speechless. Isn't it good to be alive? After experiencing the apocalypse for a lifetime, she was a person who would do anything to live a good life. But there are some people who, when they are alive, don't want to live well and have to jump around everywhere. There was a solemn look on Lin Jigang's face. He knew about Wild Rose. The story of Wild Rose has spread throughout the rescue center. But what surprised everyone was that no one knew before that such a young nurse with no outstanding performance was actually a killer. But it must be said that how many people in the rescue center and even in the Xiangqing base have other purposes to stay here? No one can tell, so Lin Jigang said to Huami, "I said I just want to have a good talk. RF City is a small city. After the apocalypse, my father turned the tide and worked hard to maintain the lives of the people in F City. But now the Xiangqing base is closed and no one has been informed when it will reopen. Our people have no way to take the supplies out of Xiangqing base. I just want to ask you, what are your conditions? What do you need us in F City to do in order to reopen the Xiangqing base?" Huami looked at Lin Jigang coldly. "It will never be possible for the Xiangqing base to reopen," Huami said to Lin Jigang very affirmatively. Her expression was too firm, not giving Lin Jigang any hope. "You also know what the situation is like outside the Xiangqing base. That is, about 20 days ago, something happened inside and outside the Xiangqing base. Look at how many children from the garrison and police academy are lying in the rescue center, with only their last breath left. You will know how tragic this attack was for us. Soon, the entire world will undergo another earth-shaking change. There is nothing we can do about it. The Xiangqing base will not be opened again until it is absolutely safe. If you are short of supplies, you can think of other ways. There is always a way for you to survive. It is not necessary to bring goods out from the Xiangqing base." In her previous life, Huami did not awaken the supernatural power of the Doomsday supermarket, and there was no place called Xiangqing base in the entire Doomsday. But the survivors are still living on as tenaciously as weeds. They do not have a fixed, large wholesale location with unlimited supplies. But they can fight their way through the zombie siege, enter the city, and find abundant supplies. There are lots of supplies in every city. The world before the end of the world was a world with abundant supplies and even overproduction. As long as you work hard to find it, you will be able to find a lot of supplies. Huami meant to tell Lin Jigang that there was no need to place all of F City's hopes on the Xiangqing base. Lin Jigang frowned, seeming quite distressed. He lowered his head, very politely, even with a hint of humility, and said to Huami, "I understand your dissatisfaction. When Xiangqing base was attacked by Chu Xing, none of us came out to help Xiangqing base. But Miss Hua, you should also understand us. The Xiangqing base is a huge monster. For a small force like us and a small gathering place of survivors, we can't do anything at all." He said it with sincerity, but Huami on the hospital bed couldn't help but sneer. "What's the point of talking about this now? It's all over. You are coming to me now and saying these things, which may seem like hindsight. Let's not talk about whether you can do something or not. The most important thing is whether you have the heart to do it, right? This is also the first time I've set up my own base. I understand the twists and turns in the minds of your father and other superiors, but not much. I don't want to be a very complicated person. As you can see, I have a son and a daughter now. I just want to turn the place where my children live into a solid fortress. I really can't take care of so many other things. Let me say it again. The Xiangqing base cannot be opened until the crisis outside is resolved. The material market will no longer be open. I will meet all the material needs of the people working in the Xiangqing base, but no matter how much, please don't come to me again. Who is born to OU survivors? Could it be that because Huami owns a doomsday supermarket, she should feed all the survivors of the apocalypse? She has no such obligation. When she was in trouble, others turned a blind eye to her difficulties in order to expand their own power. Then why did Huami open the Xiangqing base for those survivors? It is extremely difficult to defend a base. The fact that so many garrison and police academy children were seriously or slightly injured is enough to illustrate a problem. Defending the city is difficult. It is harder than ascending to heaven. If a man does not work for himself, he will be punished by heaven and earth. Huami looked at Lin Jigang sarcastically. I am also a person who will plan and plot for the development of my own power. Lin Jigang frowned and tried to persuade him again. Huami gestured to the door of her ward, because you are the doctor that Kaminghong left in the rescue center. I also know that as a medical worker, you have saved many people. Seeing that Lin Jigang still didn't move, Huami's face became colder and colder. You know, the most difficult and hardest time for a woman is when she gives birth. Back then, I could cause a river of blood. Now, it's very easy for me to crush you to death with one hand. She was not joking with Lin Jigang, and she didn't have that much time to keep arguing with Lin Jigang. After all, she is in the confinement period now, and she needs to keep her mood happy. Lin Jigang lowered his head, said nothing, and did not leave. Then I heard Huami say, "You are here in front of me now, talking about these great and righteous things, but have you ever asked your father? Does your father really care about the lives of the survivors in F City? Maybe it's not like that. Sometimes human nature cannot be explored. When you gaze into the abyss of human nature, the abyss is also staring back at you. This is a very dark topic." Huami is a person who has experienced the end of the world in his life. She knew clearly that the situation had developed to this point. Could it be that those so-called commanders were really trying hard to find a solution for the survivors of the city? If no one else is talking about it, let's just talk about Chu Xiang. He insisted on building a base in East City. Most of all, he wanted to stand out and make a career in the apocalypse. Become a big boss. Huami found it difficult to understand the original intention of these people in doing these things, but this was the ambition of men. The same goes for the management commander of City F. If he valued the lives of the survivors enough, he would have moved closer to Xiangqing long ago. Is it that Xiangqing does not have sufficient supplies? Is it that Xiangqing's walls are not strong enough? Neither. But from the very beginning, Lin Jigang's father, the management commander of City F, just wanted to benefit from the conflict between the two. It is hard to say that, even though he has such thoughts, he would still care about the lives of the survivors in that city. Having said that, Lin Jigang sighed and finally got up and walked out of Huami's ward. As soon as he closed the door of the ward, 2 guards came forward and asked vigilantly, "Why did you go into Sister Hua's ward?" Dr. Xian didn't say that. "We will change doctors today." Lin Jigang quickly took out his doctor's certificate and explained, "I have no ill intentions. You can go in and see Miss Hua. She's fine." But Lin Jigang was still taken away by the 2 guards at the door and questioned for several hours. After several hours, we finally got rid of the garrison in the emergency area. Lin Jigang immediately took out his cell phone, called his father, and informed his father of Huami's attitude. His father was very angry on the other end of the phone. Why is it so difficult to get some supplies from their Xiangqing base? It's not like we don't want to give them the crystal core. Is this Huami a woman? We have already begged her so humbly. Why did she still insist on closing the Xiangqing base? Lin Jigang lowered his head and pinched his brows. "Dad, that's not the case. We certainly didn't help her when she was in such a difficult time. There is a circle of zombies surrounding the Xiangqing base now. Opening the Xiangqing base at this time is indeed risky for the Xiangqing base. My suggestion is that we send a group of people to help clean up some of the zombies outside the Xiangqing base to show our sincerity as F City. Come and talk to Ms. Hua about the wholesale of supplies. The chief administrator of City F pondered for a moment on the other end of the phone. He looked back and forth and asked, if we spend such a huge price to clear a circle of zombies outside the Xiangqing base. In the end, Ms. Hua refused to open the Xiangqing base and would not allow us to wholesale supplies. What should we do? Lin Jigang lowered his head. He seemed quite helpless and wiped his face with his hand. He tried to reason with his father. Dad, we are asking Xiangqing for help now, not Xiangqing asking us. Since Xiangqing was closed, the people here can still live very well, very, very well. Now people outside Xiangqing are living in dire straits. We cannot take control of this dependency because we don't have any leverage. Xiangqing needs nothing and lacks nothing, so we can only show our sincerity first to impress Miss Hua, right? Lin Jigang said this from the bottom of his heart. He believed what he said, and many survivors of the drug trafficking incident had told his father about it. Xiangqing indeed has everything it needs now. Originally, Xiangqing sold supplies for money. But now Xiangqing doesn't need money. For a while, what it needs is crystal cores. Now there is no need to earn crystal cores in Xiangqing. Huami seemed determined and surrounded Xiangqing. Those who have left will not be able to come back in, and no supplies from Xiangqing will flow out anymore. This has led to people in Xiangqing becoming increasingly reluctant to go out. Of course, Xiangqing will now call on survivors to go out of the city to fight zombies. However, everyone who goes out of the city must go to the mission center to register for the mission. After completing a set of complicated procedures such as determining the number of people in your team and scanning pupils, the Xiangqing base will let these people go out of the city to fight zombies. They can fight zombies outside the barbed wire. After defeating the zombies, I went back to the barbed wire to rest. If the person who was released has not returned to the barbed wire at the specified time, the barbed wire will be closed on time, and no one will wait. Lin Jigang's father said angrily, "This is irrational. If Xiangqing continues like this, it will become a base for self-isolation." Lin Jigang asked in return, "Even if Xiangqing becomes a base of autism, so what? It needs to be open to get something from you outsiders? Not necessary. The mall base has everything. It just changed from free trade of materials to a rationing system. The original survivors can purchase supplies from Xiangqing as long as they have money and crystal cores. Now it's time to distribute supplies to jobs. Survivors who go out on missions come back and hand in crystal cores. When they reach a certain number, they can receive mission rewards. The mission reward is rich supplies. No one knows how much supplies there are in Xiangqing, but at present, according to Lin Jigang's observation, the supplies in the Xiangqing base are far from being scarce. The F City Management Commander on the other end of the phone said hesitantly, "Then let me think about it. Since you are already in the Xiangqing base, there is no need to think about coming out again. After all, you can't go back in once you come out." Although he is cautious and has the mindset of a superior, he is still a good father. I hope that Lin Jigang's son can live a peaceful and stable life. He had been urging Lin Jigang to get out of Xiangqing with the survivors before the Xiangqing base was destroyed. But now he doesn't push me anymore. He hopes that his son Lin Jigang can stay in the Xiangqing base forever. It was precisely because of this selfless fatherly love that Lin Jigang had no choice but to watch City F is coming to an end. After hanging up the phone with his father, Lin Jigang sighed deeply. This problem really has no answer. However, soon his father came up with another solution for F City. He contacted Chen Hu directly without notifying Lin Jigang. To be precise, it was Chen Hu who took the initiative to contact the management commander of City F. Chen Hu is like this. He seems to be always looking for a place. If this place doesn't work, he will change it immediately. If that one doesn't work, I'll abandon it immediately and move to another place to take root. When Chu Xiang in East City was about to die, Chen Hu decisively abandoned Chu Xiang. He contacted the commander of F City. Chen Hu's people are on the outskirts of Xiangqing. Although it is called the outskirts, it is actually very far away from the Xiangqing base. This was really beyond his expectations. He originally thought that the more dangerous a place was, the safer it was. He thought that after his people arrived outside the Xiangqing base, they would find a way to settle down. But the reality was completely different from what he thought. The difference is that there are so many zombies outside Xiangqing. On several occasions, Chun-Hu, his frail old mother, and his cousins were chased and bitten by zombies. It was because they ran fast that they got rid of the zombies. So they ran and got farther and farther away from Xiangqing. When they arrived at a safer place, they found that the place they had arrived at was close to the border of City F. Here, zombies would suddenly appear from time to time. But fortunately, Chun-Hu found a small gathering place of survivors. The supplies in this gathering place are quite sufficient. When he came here with his mother, he also found a lot of supplies along the way, so he was able to survive. When Chun-Hu contacted F City Management Commander Lin Xia for the first time, Lin Xia did not want to deal with someone like Chun-Hu. At that time, Lin Xia also said to Chun-Hu, "You are no longer of any use. What do you want from me? What can you do to help our F City?" He had been watching the fierce fight between Xiangqing and Acheng. So after Chun-Hu called him and explained his identity, Lin Xia's first reaction was that Chun-Hu had come to harm F City again. However, Lin Xia has now been forced into a corner by Huami. Since the Xiangqing base is closed and cannot be opened, supplies cannot be wholesaled. F City could not develop, and even his own living environment outside had become extremely harsh. This is a very realistic problem. Lin Xia wanted to leave F City and run to Xiangqing base, but now there is no way. So Lin Xia had no choice but to find Chun-Hu again. He thought that Chun-Hu should have a solution. After all, Chun-Hu was able to escape from Gong Yi's hands so many times. This man must have some real skills. If Chun-Hu could give him a solution, even a way to survive, Lin Xia believed that it was worth cooperating with this person. Chun-Hu laughed on the other end of the phone and said to Lin Xia, "Think about it yourself. East City has become like this. Why hasn't East City been extinct? Why can it still survive well? There must be a reason for this. And the biggest reason is that the Chu family in City E has control over the existence of many material storage sites. I don't have any great abilities. Unfortunately, I also know the existence of many places where supplies are stored. But some of the places where supplies are stored are owned by the Chu family. If Commander Lin is willing to take the risk, I can tell Commander Lin where these supplies are stored." On the other end of the phone, Lin Xia closed his eyes and he asked calmly, "What do you want?" Chun-Hu is not a simple person. Whatever he gives, he must get something in return. If Lin Xia cannot afford the reward, he would rather not take the supplies. Now this F City is very small, and there are many survivors in this small F City. However, these are not things that cannot be given up. If the time comes when Lin Xia needs to sacrifice his life, he will not hesitate to give up the lives of the survivors in City F. He is not that great, nor does he have such noble sentiments, that he would work like a captive for the survivors of this city. Chun-Hu laughed on the other end of the phone. "Commander Lin, you must be joking. How could I be so ambitious? Would I ask Commander Lin to do something that is impossible? My request is very simple. Commander Lin, please give me some energy drops so that my mother can continue to live. Isn't this request too much?" These are the only members of Chun-Hu's family who died. He didn't want his mother to leave him, so he had been using energy drops to keep his mother alive. However, as his situation became increasingly difficult, he couldn't even get a drop of energy drop. This was one of the reasons why Chun-Hu had to rush to contact Lin Xia. He wanted to use the stored supplies in his hands to exchange for the energy drops in F City. On the other end of the phone, Lin Xia couldn't help but laugh a few times. "I really didn't expect that our illustrious Chun-Hu, Boss Chen, is actually a filial son. This makes me respect Boss Chen a little more. He is about the same age as Chun-Hu, but Chun-Hu has no children of his own, while Lin Xia has an older son who stays in the base. They are all people of the same age, have all experienced the end of the world, and their social status is similar." So Lin Xia could especially understand Chun-Hu's filial piety. He said to Chun-Hu very straightforwardly, "I don't have any energy drops, so I'm afraid I can't provide you with this." Chun-Hu laughed and said, You have such a big city, and it is now much safer than East City. But you told me that you don't even have a bottle of energy drops? When Lin Xia heard Chun Hu say this, he sneered. Don't even think about harming my son. Even if I have to sacrifice the lives of everyone in this city, I won't let anyone touch my son. He is now in Xiangqing and living a good life. If I really listen to you and smuggle the supplies out of Xiangqing, my son will be thrown out of Xiangqing by that tigress in Xiangqing. Lin Xia understood this point very clearly. He is used to being timid in doing things, but there is one advantage of being timid, which is that they will think a lot before doing anything. They think about all the problems they may encounter, so they become very timid when doing things. Chun, who still had a smile on his face, but his voice was lukewarm. It seems that Commander Lin has many solutions. I don't need to solve the current difficulties faced by your F city. A bottle of energy water drops is actually only enough for Chun Hu's mother to drink for a few days. As Chun Hu's mother's vitality gradually faded, her need for energy drops became greater and greater. This made Chun Hu very anxious. He desperately hoped to have a large amount of energy drops. On the phone, Lin Xia sneered. Actually, Boss Chun, have you ever thought about a question? You need so many energy drops now. Have you ever thought that if it weren't for what you did in the past, the Xiangqing base would not have been closed? Then energy drops will no longer be a luxury item in this apocalypse. Chun Hu frowned and was about to speak. Lin Xia said, I really don't have any energy drops, but I have a lot of substitutes here. Do you want to know? Chun Hu immediately asked, what's the replacement? Lin Xia said, you also know that we in F City have many medical research experts. So after the apocalypse, our medical research experts have been conducting research. Not long ago, after the Xiangqing base was closed and the energy droplets entered a period of scarcity, our talents told me that the crystal cores produced by zombies' brains can also be absorbed by the human body and become a substitute for energy drops. This made Chun Hu fall into deep thought, and he asked carefully, are you telling the truth? Are these the zombie crystal cores used as money tokens in the Xiangqing base? Everyone in the apocalypse knows the main function of the zombie crystal core. That is to kill the zombies and collect the crystal cores in their brains. Then bring it to the Xiangqing base to exchange for a recharge card, and use the recharge card to purchase supplies at the automatic shopping machine in the Xiangqing base. Lin Xia said it with certainty. Think about it yourself. Why does Huami have to exchange crystal cores for the supplies she sells? Perhaps her energy drops are made from zombie crystal cores. I have a medical expert who has studied the energy drops sold in the Xiangqing base. In fact, the ingredients are not much different from the zombie crystal cores. It's just a diamond, the only difference between it and a diamond. Since Lin Xia said so, Chun Hu felt relieved. Indeed, he also wondered what Huami did with all those crystal cores in her hand. She must have used them to make energy droplets. Chun Hu's heart started pounding, and he was about to hang up Lin Xia's phone. But Lin Xia said calmly, I told Boss Chun about this news. Boss Chun should not break his promise to me. At that time, Chun Hu said that he would tell Lin Xia the address of the Chu family's supply storage area. Chun Hu smiled and said, of course not. He quickly told Lin Xia the addresses of several material storage sites near City F, and then hung up Lin Xia's phone. Chun Hu's cousins were dissatisfied. One of them asked tentatively, Boss, you told Lin Xia about the storage locations of these supplies. Then when we need them in the future, won't we have nothing? In fact, no one needs to analyze human nature. The reason why these cousins of Chun Hu have been following Chun Hu till now is because Chun Hu knows a lot of places where supplies are stored. After such a long time, Chun Hu followed Chu Xiang and had already figured out the storage location of Chu's family supplies. These storage areas for supplies were all hidden in Chun Hu's mind. Therefore, only by following Chun Hu can my cousins not worry about future supplies. But now, Chun Hu told Lin Xia where all these supplies were stored, just to get a few bottles of energy drops from Lin Xia. Chun Hu's cousins all felt very unbalanced. There was murderous intent in Chun Hu's eyes, but he did not show it on the surface. Instead, he put on a very gentle expression and said to his cousins, don't worry, I still have a lot of supplies stored. Compared to the few storage sites I told Lin Xia about, it's just a drop in the bucket. What's more, The supplies in these storage areas have already been emptied by the Chu family. Let's just let Lin Xia go get the supplies. He'll either come back empty-handed or just pick up the remaining supplies from the Chu family. You follow me to do things. When have I ever treated you unfairly? Don't worry. Chun Hu knew that some human natures could not be carefully analyzed. If we analyze human nature carefully, he would not spare the lives of his cousins. If it had been in the past, Chun Hu would have killed anyone who had the slightest intention towards him. But now, he has no one under his control, and he needs to keep these cousins to do things for him. So what he said about him making a comeback in the future and making these cousins live a life of luxury and giving them whatever they want does not exist. When Chun Hu made a comeback, the first people he wanted to get rid of were these cousins who followed him around. After all, these cousins know too much. After comforting his cousins, Chun Hu came to his mother's bedside. His mother looked haggard, which made Chun Hu feel very uncomfortable. They don't have a crystal core in their hands. After all, they can't even enter the Xiangqing base.
Who needs that thing?
But the most indispensable thing in this world is zombies. So, Chun Hu looked at his mother lying unconscious in the tent. Chun Hu gritted his teeth and said to his cousins, "Let's go dig the crystal core." The crystal core is inside the corpse of a zombie lying on the ground.
It is easy to get.
It is no different from picking up garbage. When they dug out the crystal core from the zombie corpse, they did not carefully rinse the crystal core with water. Only the bloody crystal core was put into Chun Hu's mother's hand. Then, according to the method Lin Xia said, she clenched Chun Hu's mother's hand into a fist and waited for the energy in the crystal core to slowly enter Chun Hu's mother's hand. Chun Hu's mother's old face gradually showed a glimmer of life. The people nearby looked at it and couldn't help but smile with joy. The cousin standing by said to Chun Hu angrily, "I never thought that the raw materials for energy drops would be so cheap. It seems that this Huami has the potential to be a profiteer. He is quite similar to the ruthlessness we used to have in doing business." The other cousins nodded repeatedly. Chun Hu snorted coldly. I don't know how many people know this news. Lin Xia is not a tight-lipped person. If he hadn't told so many people about this, we could have used these zombie crystal cores to do some business. There are people with superpowers out there now. Although not everywhere, if you want to look for them, you can still find a few. The environment these people with special abilities face is even more embarrassing than that faced by ordinary survivors. Ordinary survivors only need to eat and drink enough to survive. But this is not possible for psychics. They need to take energy drops to restore their psychic energy. But now in the apocalypse, the number of energy droplets is getting smaller and smaller. A bottle of energy drops can be exchanged for a lot of supplies in the end times. Chun Hu keenly smelled a business opportunity from this. He immediately called Lin Xia, the administrative commander of City F, and told him his idea. What he meant was that Lin Xia should never tell anyone again that the raw material of energy drops is the crystal core. They can use these crystal cores to attract a large number of people with special abilities. However, Lin Xia did not give Chun Hu any definite answer. During the half-hour phone call, Lin Xia had been practicing Tai Chi with Chun Hu. After hanging up Lin Xia's phone, Chun Hu's face was throbbing with anger, and he said, "Lin Xia, this old fox, didn't promise me anything. But I still got a piece of news from him. The zombie crystal core is the raw material of energy droplets. Lin Xia didn't tell anyone else. As for those medical research experts who discovered that the energy in the zombie crystal core is extremely similar to the energy in the energy droplets, they will not talk about it everywhere. After all, we are all experts raised in F City. The experts are so focused on their research that they can't even get in touch with ordinary survivors on weekdays." Chun Hu and his cousins looked at each other, and a familiar and sinister smile appeared on each other's face. They understand that sometimes the end justifies the means. As long as they're given a chance to make a comeback, they can do a lot of things. A few days after this incident, in the evening, Lin Xia called Lin Jigang in Xiangqing again. He comforted Lin Jigang with his words, forget it. Don't worry about the shortage of supplies in F City anymore. Your most important thing now is to stay in the Xiangqing base and don't do unnecessary things. If you anger that tigress and make her unhappy, she will really throw you out of the Xiangqing base." After hearing what Lin Xia said, I don't know what Lin Jigang felt. He felt more and more guilty, but he couldn't help but persuade his father. Dad, what I told you before was true. You have to think about it seriously. The best way out for F-City now is to let Huami see that our F-City is really moving closer to the Xiangqing base. I think if necessary, we should also directly submit to the Xiangqing base. I think it's not a bad idea for us to become a replenishment station outside the Xiangqing base. Lin Xia seemed very impatient on the other end of the phone. Let's just leave this matter at a stalemate for now. I just thought of a solution. If we use the zombie crystal cores and make energy droplets, I wonder if we can attract some superpowers to come and help us in F-City. Lin Xia didn't dare to say that the person he was working with was Chen Hu. He also knew about the irreconcilable relationship between Chen Hu and Xiangqing. Therefore, he concealed the fact that Chen Hu was outside City F from his son. But when Lin Jigang heard what Lin Xia said, he said anxiously, Dad, I won't hide it from you. In fact, there are scientific researchers in the Xiangqing base who have conducted research on zombie crystal cores. I've also read the Garrison internal reference, which says that there is indeed energy in the zombie crystal core, but the energy is extremely violent. It also contains a lot of impurities, which can cause all kinds of abnormalities and uncertainties in the body. I suggest that you keep this matter to yourself and don't act rashly. However, before Lin Jigang could finish his words, he heard Lin Xia scream off from the other end of the phone. Lin Jigang held the phone and called anxiously, Dad, Dad, what's wrong with you? Dad, 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 please say something, Dad. However, Lin Xia no longer had any way to answer Lin Jigang. What happened in F-City? Lin Jigao was completely confused. He hurried out of his office and came directly to Huami's office. However, this time, the two guards in front of Huami's office were very conscientious and stopped Lin Jigang. Lin Jigang shouted anxiously, Huami, Huami, I have something to talk to you about, Huami. Something might have happened to my dad, Huami. He rushed forward desperately, yelling and subduing the garrison's frown. A guard punched Lin Jigang in the stomach and said apologetically, Dr. Lin, please calm down and don't scare the baby. Among all the doctors, Lin Jigang is considered to have very superb medical skills. He is also highly valued by Kuminghong. These garrisons took Lin Jigang away last time and interrogated him for several hours. Kuminghong's face was black. As everyone knows, Lin Jigang has a very good reputation in the medical center. He is not a bad person. However, he was shouting and yelling in front of Huami's ward, which might really scare the two babies. Huami in the ward was looking at the 100 boys' names and 100 girls' names picked out by Gong Yi on her mobile phone. Huami was right when she said Gong Yi has been a little bit crazy recently. Gong Yi would not let go of any matter, big or small, concerning the two children, and would go back and forth, hesitating. Perhaps something that he had decided in the previous second could be overturned by Gong Yi in the next second. It's just two names. Why did Gong Yi take so long? Don't send me so many messages. Make a decision as soon as possible. Otherwise, I'll be out of confinement and both of my children won't have names yet. After replying to the message, Huami got up from the bed, opened the door of the ward, and looked at Lin Jigang, who was panicking outside her ward. She said to Dr. Lin, do you want to leave the Xiangqing base? Dr. Lin nodded hurriedly. He wants to go back to City F to see his father. Something must have happened to his father in City F. Otherwise, why would he keep calling his father? His father doesn't even answer? Huami thought for a moment and then nodded. Okay, you go directly to Xiangqing North, and from Xiangqing North, go around to your F-City. But I have to remind you, that is, once you leave Xiangqing, you can only come back after Xiangqing opens the door.
I don't know how long this time will be.
Huami couldn't guarantee anything to Lin Jigang. Maybe soon, maybe in a few years, or maybe never in his lifetime, the door to Xiangqing would be opened again. In short, Huami will not open the Xiangqing base until she is sure it is absolutely safe. Then I heard Huami say, it just so happens that I'm out of confinement too. I'll take you out. The two garrisons who were stopping Lin Jigang were stunned. They both turned around quickly and looked at Huami. Sister Hua, you can't leave. Brother and sister still need someone to take care of them. because Gong Yi had always called his two babies like this. All the garrisons called Huami's twin boy and girl brother and sister. Huami raised her hand and said to the two garrisons, "Isn't Commander Gong in Xiangqinbai? I'm only going to Xiangqinbai. Don't worry, I won't leave Xiangqing. I'm just going to see Commander Gong." She was discharged from confinement today, but Gong Yi did not return from Xiangqing base in the north. Huami really planned this. She sent Lin Jigang out of Xiangqing North, and Lin Jigang could go around to F City from Xiangqing North. City F is actually located in the south of Xiangqing base, but now the south gate has been sealed. Xiangqing West and Xiangqing East have also been sealed off. If he wanted to leave Xiangqing base, he could only go north of Xiangqing base. When the two garrisons heard this, although they disagreed, they could not say anything else. Huami appeared again, having already pushed out a specially made stroller for twins. The brother and sister sleeping in the stroller, raising their hands and kicking their legs, looking very cute. The two garrisons couldn't help but stretch their heads, their eyes all fixed on the little faces of the brother and sister. Even the extremely anxious Lin Jigang couldn't help but soften his expression. Huami pushed the twin stroller out of the emergency area. As soon as she walked out of the emergency area, she saw people around her turning to look at her and her two children. To be honest, just look at Huami's outfit and the fair and tender appearance of her two children in her stroller. It is rarely seen nowadays in the end times. It is rare even in the Xiangqing base. A woman with a big belly said with envy, "Oh, these two babies are so cute. I hope my future babies can be as beautiful as them." There was inevitably a hint of envy and expectation in this tone. During this period of time, since the Xiangqing base was closed by Huami, many pregnant women suddenly appeared in the Xiangqing base. Perhaps it is because the women in the Xiangqing base have a greatly enhanced sense of security. So women dare to get pregnant, and women who get pregnant and give birth in the Xiangqing base will receive corresponding subsidies. This is not Huami encouraging women in the apocalypse to get pregnant and have children. Instead, she felt that it was inherently difficult for women in the apocalypse to become pregnant and give birth. She can reduce the burden on pregnant women and mothers and do a little within her ability. Looking at the pregnant woman next to him, an expression of envy appeared on his face, and he kept staring at his brother and sister. Huami knocked down the small shed on top of the car. Exit the emergency room. At the door, the garrison drove a large nanny car. The garrison driver turned around and said to Huami, "Sister Hua, this nanny car was specially modified by our garrison. Based on the nanny car you left behind, we specially thickened the iron sheet and replaced the car's glass. The glass of this car is now bulletproof." At this time, Huami was putting her two babies on the bed in the nanny car. She looked at the interior layout of the nanny car, which was no different from the nanny car she had won in a previous lottery. Just added some safety straps for babies. She now puts the two children on the bed, which has two small baby straps that can be tied on the two babies' bellies. In this way, the two little guys won't wander around randomly while driving. Huami felt that this design was very thoughtful. When she heard the garrison driving in front explaining this to her, Huami nodded. She saw Lin Jigang sitting in a chair with an anxious look on his face, constantly calling his father. Huami asked Dr. Lin, "Your father hasn't answered the phone yet?" Lin Jigang looked like he was about to cry and shook his head. So Huami said nothing more and urged the garrison to drive all the way to the north of Xiangqing. Gong Yi in the north of Xiangqing is consolidating the Yunwu city wall. Now the city wall in the west of Xiangqing has been built to a height of 8 or 9 meters. The contractor also led a large number of female workers under him and gradually built the city wall to the north of Xiangqing. At the construction site in Xiangqinbai, the contractor heard that Huami had come to Xiangqinbai with her brother and sister. His eyes were shining brightly. The contractor immediately took out 2 huge diamond necklaces. Each bead on the diamond necklace was as big as a pigeon egg. The contractor said happily to Huijing standing beside him, See? This is a gift I got for my brother and sister." Huijing was speechless. He rolled his eyes at the contractor and said calmly, "But my brother and sister are so young, they probably can't play with this kind of diamond necklace yet." He also didn't know where the contractor got the diamond necklace. Every pigeon egg looks exactly the same, with the same specifications and size. It sparkles in the sunlight during the day and hurts the eyes. Such a large pigeon egg was rare before the end of the world. But the contractor found 2 large strings. The contractor ignored Hu Jing. He happily held 2 diamond necklaces and stood on the roadside to personally welcome Hua Mi's arrival. When the nanny car slowly stopped and the door opened, the contractor immediately went forward, shouting, "Hey, hey, my brothers and sisters, I'm here to see you." However, his body was pushed away by Gong Yi behind him. Yes, moved aside. Gong Yi got on the car, and the contractor could only follow behind Gong Yi, watching him get on the car, pick up his sister on the bed, and coax her carefully. My sister's big eyes kept staring at Gong Yi as soon as she saw him. Gong Yi was extremely happy. "Oh, you see, Daddy is here. Oh, you miss Daddy too." Yeah, Dad misses you too. I miss you so much." Hua Mi was standing aside, and her teeth ached when she heard what Gong Yi said. The contractor looked aggrieved and rubbed his way to his brother's side. He took out the diamond necklace in his hand and shook it towards his brother. "Look, brother, I made this for you." My brother frowned seriously, glanced away, and looked to the side. He didn't seem to be very interested in such shiny things. Hua Mi, who was standing next to him, looked at the diamond necklace in the contractor's hand with surprise. She was a little surprised, just like Hu Jing. "I just think that this contractor is so capable that he got 2 such large diamond necklaces." I heard the contractor say to my brother again, "What's wrong? Don't you like such a small pigeon egg? I have a bigger one here." Because the brother on the small bed raised his hands and kicked his feet, his little mouth opened and closed, his eyes only looking at the contractor, but he didn't smile. My brother's attention was not at all on the diamond necklace in the contractor's hand. So the contractor thought to himself that his brother might not like such small pigeon eggs. Hua Mi was about to speak up for her brother, saying that he was too young to appreciate such things. As a result, I saw the contractor rummaging in his briefcase and took out a diamond as big as a fist. He placed the big diamond next to his brother, then turned around and rummaged in his purse, pulling out another big diamond as big as a fist. The contractor said happily, "This one belongs to my sister." As he said that, he looked at his sister in Gong Yi's arms. The foreman seemed a little lonely. Could his sister hug him for a while? Put the sisters next to the brother first. The contractor spoke pitifully, hoping that Gong Yi would have a change of heart and let him hug his sister. However, Gong Yi completely ignored the contractor's emotions.
Hua Mi was really surprised this time.
She raised her eyebrows and deliberately said to the contractor, "I want one this big recently." She gestured to the size of a handbag and said, "Do you have a diamond this big?" The contractor scratched his scalp, rummaged in his wallet, and really took out a diamond the size of a handbag for Hua Mi, and said in a flattering manner, "Here, Miss Hua, I have a bigger one." Hua Mi pointed to the outside of the nanny car and said to the contractor, "Then get me a diamond as big as a toy car." This really puts the contractor in a difficult position. But he rubbed his hands, thought about it, and decided that he could no longer hide it. It seems that nothing can be hidden from Miss Hua. The contractor simply straightened his body and said, Yes, I'll get it for Miss Hua. If Miss Hua needs it, no matter how big the diamond is, I'll get it for her." As he spoke, the contractor reached out and tried to take something out of the briefcase beside him. Hua Mi grabbed the contractor's wrist and led him out of the nanny car. Hua Mi asked the contractor seriously, "Tell me, what's wrong with you?" The contractor seemed very embarrassed. He chuckled at Hua Mi a few times and said nothing. Next, he really took out a toy car-sized thing from his briefcase. It was the kind of toy car that children made and could drive. When a child sits in such a big toy car, he will be the coolest guy in the whole community. The contractor explained, "I actually don't know what's going on. Just before, I was anxious to repair the wall on the west side of the city, and then I found out that I could turn into a diamond. During that period, several power grids outside the west of the city were blown up. The zombies are at the gates of the city and are about to approach the west wall of the city. The contractor is getting anxious. Every day, he opened his eyes and closed them, thinking about repairing the western wall of Xiangqing Base as soon as possible. He teeters on the brink of collapse every day. At that time, just putting a little straw on his emotions would crush him. Therefore, the contractor may have been pushed to the limit of his life by this tense environment and emotional pressure. Then there was a breakthrough. The contractor said, "Since then I have been able to conjure up diamonds frequently. At first it was just small diamonds, and then later on big and small diamonds were all fine. Later, I turned those diamonds into bricks and piled them directly on the city wall west of Xiangqing." The wall was built pretty fast. As he spoke, the contractor rolled up his sleeves excitedly and described to Huami how he built a 1-meter-high wall in just 1 minute. For a contractor, this ability is called matching. Huami understood and said to the contractor, "I see that you are in such a state that you won't need to worry about not having workers to repair the city wall in the future. With your ability to make diamonds, what do we have to worry about at the Xiangqing base?" At this time, the contractor finally reacted. He immediately said to Huami excitedly, "Then I will build a glittering diamond wall behind Commander Gong's cloud wall. Diamonds are also quite hard, so we are not afraid even if more zombies come to the north of Xiangqing base. In fact, the cement produced by Huami's factory is already very hard. These diamond drill bits cannot drill through this cement wall. If there is a diamond wall contractor and 2 walls are built at the Xiangqing base, the base will be safer and more stable." Seeing the contractor nodding hurriedly, Huami just turned around to leave. The contractor immediately pointed to the sparkling diamond toy car under his feet and said, Miss Hua, I'll take this diamond toy car back and ask the technician to install an engine and 4 wheels for my brother and sister to play with." Huami imagined the bling-bling flashing scene. She looked at the contractor hesitantly and wanted to politely reject his kindness. But looking at the contractor's expectant expression, Huami still nodded with difficulty. Well, actually, in the subordinate relationship between her and the contractor, it always felt like Huami was cooperating with the contractor. It is really hard to describe what the contractor has done. But what can she do? Every time Huami saw the contractor, he was trying very hard, trying his best to please her. Huami could only try her best to cooperate and pretend that she was being pleased. Back in the nanny car, Lin Jigang has already got off the car. In order not to disturb Gong Yi's family reunion, he and the garrison soldiers stayed outside the nanny car. Lin Jigang has been calling his father. He is so anxious that he is afraid he can't control himself. Huami, who had just gotten into the nanny car, saw Gong Yi measuring milk powder with a measuring cup before she started talking. Then, with a serious expression, he carefully poured the milk powder into the bottle. The 2 babies on the bed were humming. Obviously, they were hungry. Huami watched Gong Yi skillfully prepare the milk powder, dropped a drop of milk on the back of his hand, tested the temperature, turned around, and picked up her sister naturally. "Feed my sister with milk powder first." As for her brother, Huami didn't need to ask. To Gong Yi, since her brother was a boy, in Gong Yi's words, boys should be starved for a while before they can take on big responsibilities. Seeing Huami getting in the car, Gong Yi asked while feeding his sister milk, "Why did you come to Xiangqing? Are you planning to leave the city and go to Yi City? Xiangqing North and Acheng, one is in the north and the other is in the south. If Huami wanted to go to Yi City, she would have to bypass the entire Xiangqing base. This has invisibly increased the danger considerably." Gong Yi looked at Huami with disapproval. He certainly would not allow Huami to take his 2 cubs and travel through mountains and rivers to City Yi at this time. Huami laughed, "No way, I just brought my brother and sister to see their dad. How could I possibly go to a place as dangerous as Yi City? Don't worry." After he said this, Gong Yi's expression looked a little better, but he was still worried about Huami. Seeing his doting face again, looking at his sister, who was trying hard to suckle in his arms, Gong Yi said softly and gently, "Look how cute my sister is. It's okay for you 3 to stay here with me. I'll ask Mr. Bao to build a simple diamond house for the 3 of you later. You will live in the diamond house." He spoke in a soft voice, afraid to disturb his sister while she was feeding. Huami looked speechless. It was hard to imagine that a tough guy like King Kong, who is usually as strong as a steel, would be so extra cautious when facing his daughter. The contrast is too great. After Gong Yi finally finished feeding his sister, he held his brother and fed him. However, when he was feeding his brother, the expression on Gong Yi's face was a little bit different. He looked extremely serious, with his brows furrowed into a faint frown. In Gong Yi's words, boys should not be spoiled too much. When he grows up, his son will go to serve as a garrison officer. While Gong Yi was feeding the babies, Huami got out of the car, found Lin Jigang in the corner, grabbed him by the collar, and walked towards the nearby public toilet. Gong Yi's mental power would not enter public toilets and bathing places. Before Lin Jigang could speak, Huami dropped a piece of black soil at the entrance of the public toilet and teleported to City D with Lin Jigang. Now the only teleportation point out of Xiangqing Base is City D. Lin Jigang looked at the changes in the surrounding environment in surprise. He turned to look at Huami and asked, "Miss Hua, what's going on?" Huami stuffed a bulging backpack into Lin Jigang's hand. She sat on the ground, put on a pair of boots, and said to Lin Jigang quickly, "Don't ask yet. I have 2 things to tell you. The first is that you have to follow me closely and fight your way out of here with me. The second thing is don't ask me why." As soon as Huami finished speaking, she saw Guose jumping in from outside the electric fence. Guose also activated his supernatural power. Because she has been killing zombies continuously for a long time, her physical fitness has become quite good. At the same time, Huami's energy drops have an unlimited supply. Guose's strength ability is higher than that of ordinary people. In addition, her posture is more agile and her jumping ability is better. Huami put on a pair of boots, sat on the ground, and squinted at Guose. Look at her light figure, flying over one electric fence after another. Huami was thinking about it because Guose had always used energy droplets to replenish his energy instead of crystal cores. The energy droplets synthesized in Huami's factory have extremely pure energy, so much so that perhaps they can stimulate other superpowers in Guose's body. This is how superpowers work. When one type of superpower is brought to its extreme, other abilities of the body will be greatly enhanced as well. When the overall quality of the body is comprehensively improved, the level of supernatural powers will reach a new level. As soon as Guose approached, she took a close look at Huami, who was sitting on the ground. Her first words were surprised, "Oh my god, Ami, why are you so fat?" Don't blame Guose for being surprised. She actually hadn't seen Huami for a long time. In the end times, there are very few women who can be as fair and plump as Huami. Huami rolled her eyes helplessly. In fact, she has collected a lot of frozen goods in her warehouse. But Huami never used these frozen goods. Gong Yi, on the other hand, got all kinds of frozen bones, frozen chickens, and frozen fish from somewhere. He stewed them 3 times a day, feeding Huami with different methods. This led to Huami's current figure being particularly plump. Huami stood up and patted the dust off her ace. "Well said. I came to D City just to lose weight." After saying that, Huami dragged out a 2-meter-long sword from her storage. She said to Guose, who was also holding a long knife, "Since you are here, help me fight my way out of D City." Before the words were finished, Lin Jigang, who was standing behind Huami, looked at the long knife in Huami's hand with a look of surprise. Why did Huami suddenly take out a long knife? Lin Jigang opened his mouth to ask, but remembered what Huami told him. Don't ask why. Lin Jigang shut his mouth, but he saw Huami rushing out like a sharp arrow. Lin Jigang remembered what Huami said and asked him to follow her closely. So he also stumbled and followed Huami. Just as he stepped onto an electric fence, Guose grabbed Lin Jigang's collar from behind. Guose said helplessly, "Don't you even look at what's under your feet?" She grabbed Lin Jigang by the back of his collar and jumped into the air, over an electric fence and landed behind Huami. Guose couldn't help but whistle. Beautiful. She had been in City D for such a long time, but this was the first time she saw someone killing zombies so smoothly, as if they were dancing. Looking at Huami's light and agile movements, it turned out that she was pregnant at that time and did not use her full strength at all. Now that Huami has unloaded the food in her stomach, she is particularly excited about killing zombies. Of course, Guose was not willing to be outdone. She also became more excited and caught up with Huami with a long sword in hand. However, Guosei's fighting ability is still much worse than Huami's. She could only pick up flowers and kill the remaining ones. Of course, Guosei was not willing to be outdone. She also became more excited and caught up with Huami with a long sword in hand. However, Guosei's fighting ability is still much worse than Huami's. She could only pick up flowers and kill the remaining ones. Therefore, Guosei's greater role is to protect Lin Jigang. She protected Lin Jigang. Huami smiled and looked back, glanced at Guosei, and saw Lin Jigang stumbling, blocking left and right, and barely following in Guosei's protection net. Huami said, "Let's keep moving forward." Originally, Guosei thought Huami was going to kill her way to the front gate of City D, but he saw Huami change direction and kill her way towards the other direction of City D. After leaving D City from this direction, Huami stopped and said to Guosei, "It's been such a long time, and there are still so many zombies in your D City. Gus, your fighting ability is not good enough." At least compared to Huami in her previous life, Guosei's fighting ability is far inferior. In her previous life, Huami was once alone and trapped in a city full of zombies. At that time, she was in a desperate situation, but in less than a month, she managed to clear out almost all the zombies in the city. Looking at City D now, it is still full of zombies. Guosei just felt that Huami was a person who spoke without any concern. She pointed to the north of D City and said to Huami, "Look for yourself. How many zombies are coming south from the north every day? You will now know why the number of zombies in my City D remains high. I work very hard every day to clear out the zombies in City D, but after I clear them out, there are still more. After I clear them out, there are still more. This amount of monsters spawns more frequently than when they are caused by a bug." It's not Guosei's fault that he didn't try hard enough to kill the zombies, but the entire city of D is in the midst of a zombie tide. If the source cannot be blocked, zombies in City D will continue to emerge in an endless stream. Huami expressed her understanding. She clapped her hands and threw a piece of black soil towards the back door exit of City D. She said to Guosei, "Please help me keep an eye on Dr. Lin. I'm going to go back to feed my baby first, then come back and continue fighting." Guosei looked up and glared at Huami. She still didn't understand what Huami wanted to do. Huami's figure flashed on the spot and then disappeared. Lin Jigang stumbled forward and looked in surprise at the place where Huami disappeared. He asked Guosei, "So, there is a teleportation point here as well?" This teleportation point is really amazing. Everyone in the end times knows that it is because of the tearing of time and space, because of black holes in the universe, and because of all kinds of grand, mysterious reasons that cannot be explained by science. Teleport points exist. All it takes is survivors to discover them one by one. So now there is one more known teleportation point. Today, it seems that there is more than one teleportation point in City D, one at the main gate of City D, and one in the safe zone of City D. It turns out that there is also a teleportation point at the back door of City D. Guosei was speechless, looking at the naive Lin Jigang. She didn't know how to explain it. In fact, where did this teleportation point come from? Guosei had a vague feeling that it should be related to Huami, but she would not tell anyone about this kind of thing. After all, no one knew whether it would bring any trouble to Huami. Guosei looked at the big package that Huami left there. She stepped forward and unzipped the package, revealing pieces of electric nets and buckets of jelly stones mixed with energy drops. A generator is also available. Guosei immediately turned around and looked at Lin Jigang, who was about to ask why, and said, "Don't ask why. We're going to stay here tonight. You should assemble the power grid first. If we don't assemble the power grid, we won't be able to sleep well at night." As he spoke, Guosei moved quickly and agilely and began to assemble the power grid. Lin Jigang was stunned for a moment, then started moving with Guosei. At this moment, Huami flew back to the public toilet in an instant. She cleaned herself up in the women's restroom of the public toilet, took a shower with energy drops, and changed into clean clothes. Only then did he walk out of the public toilet calmly and return to the nanny car with the confidence that he had just finished defecating. In the nanny car, he had already coaxed the two children to sleep. He raised his eyelids, looked at Huami, and asked indifferently, "What were you doing? You just went to the bathroom. How many hours will it take?" Huami curved her lips and smiled at Gong Yi. Woman, please excuse me. Before she could finish her words, Gong Yi grabbed her wrist and pulled Huami closer, almost directly into his arms. He lowered his head and sniffed Huami's temples with a hint of teasing. There's also a smell of shower gel, so you stayed in the public toilet for a few hours and took a shower before coming out? Huami didn't say anything, just laughed. In fact, perhaps Gong Yi had guessed what she was doing. It's just that Gong Yi didn't say it. Just as Huami was considering what to make up in her mind, he didn't believe it, but she had to tell him a lie to fool him. Maybe it was Huami's illusion. She always felt that when Gong Yi said this to her, the tone was as if Gong Yi was talking to his sister. Huami couldn't help but feel her bones a little crispy. She raised her head slightly and looked at Gong Yi's face, only to realize that the distance between them was so close. It was so close that it seemed that if Gong Yi only moved a little closer to her, Huami's lips would touch Gong Yi's lips. At this time, Huami was actually thinking seriously that the hormonal scent from this man was so obvious. Should she push Gong Yi down and force herself on him? That was when Huami was struggling, wondering whether she should be a human being or a female beast. Someone outside the garrison called out, "Commander, there are survivors." At this moment, Gong Yi suddenly seemed to come back to his senses. There was a slight blush on his bronze cheeks, and no one knew what indescribable things he was thinking at that moment. Gong Yi lowered his head, as if to cover up, and explained to Huami, "I'll go check it out. You look after the child and don't run around. Come back later, and I'll help you." The two of them did not hire a nanny because they felt that no one could be trusted in this world. Gong Yi can't trust anyone, and Huami can trust no one even more. So the couple raises their children themselves. To be precise, as long as Gong Yi is with the two children, Gong Yi is taking care of the children while Huami is resting. Huami would only take over the job of taking care of the children when Gong Yi came to Xiangqingbai and was busy. After seeing Gong Yi off, Huami stayed in the nanny car for a while, then pushed her two twin babies and prepared to stroll around the north of Xiangqing base. She planned to set up more teleportation points in hidden corners. It is very convenient for her to distract herself at any time. Anyway, with Gong Yi's procrastination, Huami would forget about going to the East City base to kill Chu Xing. After all, the child still needs to grow up, and there are many things to do, and she won't have a single day free. So Huami decided that when Gong Yi was taking care of the child, she would fly out of Xiangqing, take Lin Jigang with her, and move forward a little bit every day. Just like Yugong moving the mountain, let's get out of D City first. As a result, just as she stepped out of the nanny car, a woman rushed over from the opposite side. The woman looked at Huami and smiled. "Excuse me, are you looking for a babysitter? I think your two children are so cute. I can help you take care of them." Huami looked at the woman coldly and shook her head. This woman was inexplicably strange. After receiving Huami's rejection, the warm smile on the woman's face suddenly collapsed. She threw something into the stroller at a very fast speed. Huami had a feeling that something was wrong with this woman, so she quickly turned around and swept away the thing that had been thrown into the baby. Something fell into the nanny car. Huami flew forward a long distance, carrying the stroller. She walked right past the woman who was throwing something. As soon as Huami landed, the nanny car behind her exploded with a. The flames inside were like a blooming flower. All the car windows were shattered and the doors were deformed. The thing that Huami just swept out of the stroller was a bomb. Huami turned around and grabbed the woman's neck without waiting for her to run away. She threw the woman who threw the bomb directly to the ground, and the back of the woman's head hit the hard stone slab with a. She looked at Huami viciously and shouted loudly, "You vicious woman! You sealed off the Xiangqing base and killed the survivors outside." Huami bent over. Her hands were extremely strong, and she pinched the woman's neck, almost suffocating her. She looked at the blushing woman angrily and said angrily, "Am I going to kill the survivors outside? Without the Xiangqing base, you can't survive? Don't you have arms and legs? You couldn't kill the zombies and they starved to death. What does it have to do with me? There was no Xiangqing base in the previous life. How did the survivors of the previous life survive? Why did she attract so much hatred now that she has closed the Xiangqing base? Huami looked up and saw a few survivors standing in the distance, with frightened and complicated expressions on their faces. These survivors witnessed Huami being attacked by this woman. He also witnessed Huami pinching the woman's neck and slapping her to the ground. Huami asked coldly, "What are you looking at, those survivors standing there? What's the matter? If you think I'm wrong, you can come and kill me. If you can't kill me, get out." The survivors opened their mouths and saw the garrisons in the distance, all running over. Even the contractor and Huijing came over. No matter how dissatisfied those survivors were, they didn't dare to talk nonsense at this moment. They got anxious and turned around and left the scene. The area where Huami had the accident is located inside the Yunwu City Wall to the north of Xiangqing Base. No one knows how many monsters and demons are hiding inside this wall. Sometimes people are covered with skin, and no one knows what is underneath the skin. The garrison took the woman from Huami's hands and said to her, "Don't worry, Sister Hua, we will definitely give you an explanation." When they said this, the garrisons all had expressions of guilt on their faces. Their boss clearly told them to take good care of Huami and their brothers and sisters when he went to consolidate the Yunwu City Wall. As a result, their commander Gong had just finished giving instructions when he went to work on consolidating the Yunwu City Wall. Then they threw the bomb into the brother and sister's nanny box. Everyone in the garrison seemed to feel extremely guilty. One of the garrisons said to Huami, "Sister Hua, we need to take this woman away for interrogation to see if there are other forces behind her." As they said this, the garrisons looked at the woman in their hands with increasingly unfriendly expressions. What kind of woman could make such an exquisite bomb, accurately find the target, and drop the bomb next to Huami when all the garrisons were delayed? Is this something that can be done by one person? The woman was pinned down by the garrison, and she screamed wildly. "What do you want to do?
What do you want to do to me?
I am just a woman. What terrible means are you going to use to deal with me?" This was particularly interesting, especially since this woman screamed particularly loudly when she was being forced to walk by the garrison. This attracted all the survivors to look at her. Huami said directly, "Wait a moment." The garrison pressed the woman and stopped. Huami walked forward and said to the woman who was howling, "Please repeat what you just said." This woman seems to be particularly stubborn. No one knows why she hates Xiangqing Base and Huami so much. Since Huami wanted her to say it, she would just say it again. So the woman shouted at Huami, "Isn't it? We also know your torture methods. I am a woman. What will you do to us?" Anyone can guess it. Humans always love to imagine. This woman never finishes what she says, and she always acts like she is going to be treated like this or that by others. Those who see a woman like this will naturally have associations. Huami raised her hand and slapped the woman in the face, causing her head to be crooked. She looked at Huami hatefully and was about to curse. Huami slapped the woman again. "You!" The woman glared. Huami slapped her again. As soon as she opened her mouth, Huami raised her hand and continued to slap her. That was suppressing. The two women turned his head away, pretending not to see anything. "Are you a human?" Huami asked. She continued to slap the woman. "Two little kids like that. Are you a human being? Why are you so vicious?" Seeing the woman trying to explain herself, Huami didn't want to listen at all. "If the garrison hadn't wanted to interrogate you, I would have just broken your neck." Huami's eyes were red as he stuffed a large piece of rag into the woman's mouth. She said to the struggling woman with a protesting look on her face, "Also, I advise you to stop being so conceited. You are too ugly. Not only is your heart ugly, but it is also dirty. Anyone who likes you is trash. Even the garrison would find you dirty if they touched you. As long as you explain everything you need to explain, no one will torture you deliberately. If you explain everything clearly, I'll just shoot you and let you go on your way. Don't worry, no matter how much I torture you, it won't do anything to your body." The good thing about the Xiangqing garrison is that there are many ways of torture, but the Xiangqing garrison will not do things that humiliate women. Gong, you would not let the Xiangqing garrison do these things. Even during the interrogation process, the procedures for garrisoning in Xiangqing were extremely standardized, to the point that they were difficult to find in the entire apocalypse. The woman in front of him had a rag stuffed in her mouth, and her eyes were filled with hatred, but She was still looking at Huami. Her face was swollen because Huami slapped her. Huami's hands are very strong now, and one slap can destroy half of this woman's face. The woman was taken away, and Huami immediately found Huijing. She asked Huijing, "Has the Xiangqing base north always been this chaotic?" Huami didn't know before that she lived inside the Xiangqing base and spent most of her time in the rescue center. This rescue center has been regulated and kept in great order by Yang Honglin's police officers. The overall atmosphere has almost returned to the level of order before the end of the world. The overall feeling given to Huami by the north of Xiangqing base is not very good, and it is very messy. The further north you go towards Xiangqing base, the more it feels like you are moving from a town into the suburbs. The key is that there are still many survivors in this suburb. They were crowded in a mess in the north of Xiangqing base, and no one paid attention to them at first. The hygiene is very poor, and there is no order now. This group of survivors is the last group of survivors to enter the Xiangqing base before it was closed. At the time, Yang Honglin was busy managing order in Xiangqing, and the police force suffered heavy losses this time, so there was a serious shortage of manpower to maintain order here. Therefore, these survivors were not promptly provided with accommodation. Instead, they were given tents to stay temporarily in the north of Xiangqing base. Before the Xiangqing base is opened, you cannot enter the interior of the Xiangqing base. Huijing explained, in fact, the reason why this group of survivors were able to enter the Xiangqing base was because they took advantage of one of our loopholes. Because before they entered Xiangqing base had actually been closed. And most of them are survivors from the cities north of Xiangqing base that have been completely transformed into zombies. These survivors were forced to come to the Xiangqing base by the zombie tide behind them. In other words, a large group of zombies were running behind them. No matter which direction they ran, there would be zombies chasing and intercepting them. At that time, their only way to survive was the Xiangqing base. At that time, the power grid in the north of the entire Xiangqing base was very weak, and there was no city wall at all. It was all thanks to Gong Yi and his garrison, and some survivors who vowed to live and die with Xiangqing base, that they were able to resist the zombies north of Xiangqing base. At that time, Gong Yi and his colleagues had no way to take care of the survivors who were fleeing. So the survivors took this opportunity and squeezed to the north of Xiangqing base. Later, Gong Yi's mental power materialized and became a wall of cloud and mist. This group of survivors happened to be inside the wall of cloud and mist. So, it was included in the Xiangqing base. Huami listened to what Huijing said and she asked thoughtfully. In other words, this group of people entered the Xiangqing base after I decided to close the Xiangqing base? If they hate me so much, why do they still want to stay in Xiangqing base? Why don't they go out? The zombie tide in the north of Xiangqing base is not completely resolved, but it is much less stressful than before. If everyone unites and rushes out from the Xiangqing base to the north at this time, we can also leave this place. Huijing couldn't help but sneer after hearing what Huami said. He said, if these survivors are willing to leave, this matter will be simple. Who among those living in the apocalypse doesn't know that our Xiangqing base is good? Who doesn't know that our Xiangqing base has sufficient supplies and energy? It would be strange if these people were so stupid as to leave our Xiangqing base. Since no one is willing to leave the Xiangqing base, but the Xiangqing base is reluctant to do so, this group of people will be placed inside the Xiangqing base. So this group of people were left in the north of Xiangqing base and temporarily let them live in tents in the north of Xiangqing base. When the right opportunity comes, this group of people will be slowly absorbed into the Xiangqing base. In this process of absorption, this group of people must be screened to avoid letting in some messy people. Huami was talking to Huijing about the survivors stranded in the Xiangqing base. A garrison came running over and stood behind Huami. He saluted Huami with a standard garrison salute and said, Sister Hua, this woman has confessed. She does have a gang. This gang exists among the group of stranded survivors in the north of Xiangqing base. There are quite a few of them, and they are quite large. According to the woman, there are probably several hundred. That woman doesn't know the exact list either, but she told us that this group of people have great opinions about our Xiangqing base, especially about Sister Hua. Perhaps it is because people who have never been to the Xiangqing base have only heard that there are sufficient supplies and energy in the Xiangqing base. But I never thought that after actually entering the Xiangqing base, I would discover how good this base is. The more they think this base is good, the more they feel that closing this base and not opening it to the outside world would be a very cruel and heavy loss to the suffering survivors outside. We are all human beings. Why can some people live in the Xiangqing base? And some people can only suffer outside the Xiangqing base? The garrison said to Huami carefully, "The woman who attacked my brother and sister, her husband, mother-in-law, children, etc. are all outside the Yunwu city wall. When the commander was building the cloud mist wall, this woman's husband, mother-in-law, and children were not with her. So they were separated. It took almost no effort to pry open the woman's mouth. There seems to be something wrong with this woman's mental state. As soon as she was slightly provoked, he would pour out everything to the garrison. Why did she do this, and who were the people who helped her do this?" While venting her emotions, the woman was also telling the garrison about her inner distress. Because the cloud and mist wall was built in an instant. It was not the result of a long-term building process. It was the materialized wall of Gong Yi's spiritual power. So she and her family didn't react at that time. As she approached the Xiangqing base, she was included in the Yunwu city wall, while her family stood far away and were naturally excluded from the Xiangqing base. Like the woman, there are said to be many survivors who were forced to be separated from their families and excluded. Therefore, this group of stranded survivors who were stranded in the north of Xiangqing base and had already moved into tents all had a lot of complaints about Huami. They believed that if Huami had not blocked the Xiangqing base, then today, all of their relatives and friends could enter the Xiangqing base, such a good place. All the people they care about, all the people they love, will be happy. Huami, who closed the Xiangqing base, was the culprit who prevented their family from reuniting and obtaining happiness. How can you blame Miss Hua for this? Hu Jing frowned and looked at the garrison who came to report the results of the review. He asked, "We have said since the beginning that there is danger outside the Xiangqing base, so we have to close the Xiangqing base. Many people have seen what happened in the Xiangqing base during that time, but now they are saying that Sister Hua closed the Xiangqing base. Are they still reasonable?" If Hu Jing heard about this, he would only feel sorry for Huami obviously. If it weren't for Huami, the entire Xiangqing base would not have been established. Some people simply don't see this. They would only think that Huami Hai's Xiangqing base was closed. The garrison opened his mouth, looked at Huami, and said nothing. There are some things he dare not say. In fact, when this woman was venting her emotions, she once shouted wildly. What she meant was to blame Huami. Why did she have to give birth to a child? If Huami didn't give birth to a child, Chen Hu and Chu Xing wouldn't have taken advantage of it. So much so that now I have entered a state of self-isolation. This kind of complaint from women actually represents a kind of thinking among women which is not uncommon in the entire Xiangqing base. Whenever people talk about it, they will say, "It's the end of the world now. Why do women still have to give birth to children?" No matter how much you blame others, you still have to blame Huami yourself. Who else can you blame? If she didn't give others the opportunity to take advantage of her, would others take advantage of her to attack the Xiangqing base? Of course, the garrison would not say such things to Huami, as they were not people who didn't know right from wrong. All the garrisons treated their brothers and sisters as their own children, so when they heard the woman say such words, every garrison was particularly angry. But they kept in mind how terrible postpartum depression was, and no one would tell Huami such bad words. Huami raised her eyebrows and glanced at the garrison who seemed to be hesitant to speak. In fact, she understood everything without the garrison telling her. Because her hearing is very good now, Huami can hear people talking softly in the distance. Now her mind is filled with the many survivors who are blaming her behind her back. What I meant is roughly the same. It's just like a girl who is walking on the street at night wearing fancy clothes and is assaulted by a bad guy. People only blame the girl and ask why she is walking on the street at night dressed like that. The principle is actually the same. Who caused the Xiangqing base to be closed? Don't you have any idea? Hu Jing was still cursing. Huami raised her hand to interrupt Hu Jing. She turned around and said to the garrison expressionlessly, They were harmed and their families could not be reunited because it happened so suddenly. Although Commander Gong's cloud wall was built to protect Xiangqing, it did prevent their family from reuniting. We must now put things right, correct our mistakes in a timely manner and apologize to them. Hearing her say this, Hu Jing opened his mouth eagerly and looked at Huami. Miss Hua, that's not the case. The garrison also frowned and couldn't help shaking his head desperately. No, why should they apologize? Why should they correct their mistakes? Why should they set things right? What did they do wrong? If they were to apologize, then it was these people who should apologize to Sister Hua and to the Xiangqing base. These stranded survivors caused such great harm to Sister Hua and dropped bombs on 2 innocent children. Shouldn't these stranded survivors be cut into pieces? Moreover, the stranded survivors also caused chaos in the Xiangqing base, adding burden to their garrison. It was obviously very hard for the garrison to guard the Xiangqing base desperately. The police officers maintained the order and stability of the Xiangqing base day and night. Aren't they tired? Just because these stranded survivors were separated from their families, they vented their conflicts and hatred on 2 innocent children. It is these radical-minded people who are wrong, not the Xiangqing base. At this time, both Hu Jing and the garrison thought that Huami was suffering from postpartum depression, so much so that she had begun to talk nonsense. But then I heard Huami say, since these stranded survivors have such strong opinions about me and want to be reunited with their families, then I should rectify the situation and let them go. No one is saying that they must be forced to stay in the Xiangqing base. Just follow the list this woman provided and dig up whatever you can find. I don't mind sending all the people we find out to the north of Xiangqing base. Remember, no matter what these people do in the future, they will never be able to enter the Xiangqing base again. After all, in Xiangqing base, there is someone like me who they hate so much. How can they stay here and breathe the same air with me? Huami did not choose to kill the woman who attacked her. She chose to let it go. Look how kind she is. This is because Huami has correctly realized her mistakes. She wants to put things right and set these stranded survivors free. The woman who threw the bomb was named Chen Xiumin. At this time, he was detained in a small garrison camp in the north of Xiangqing base. She watched in horror as the 2 guards entered the tent. At this time, the rag in the woman's mouth had been taken out, and she had vented her emotions. After venting her emotions, Chen Xiumin seemed much more normal. At least she began to think about her current situation with normal thinking. Facing the garrison, she shook her head and shouted loudly, "What do you want to do to me? You are also stationed here." The garrison was a great and noble profession. You cannot destroy the greatness of this profession. I'm warning you, if you do anything to me, I won't let you go even if I become a ghost. Tang Yu entered the tent and rolled his eyes at the woman speechlessly. He took out a needle, grabbed the woman's hand, and gave the woman an injection in the fingertips. The woman's blood was taken in a test tube. The woman screamed. She really thought that the garrison at Xiangqing base would do something to her body. Do something worse. But Tang Yu said, "What are you yelling about? I'm just taking a drop of your blood and recording your DNA. Don't worry, you and your accomplices will get what you want, and you will never see our Sister Hua again." Don't you particularly hate our Sister Hua? Sister Hua said that you should not breathe the same air with her. All right, that's enough. Get up, and we'll take you out of the Xiangqing base. Chen Xiumin widened her eyes in shock. She didn't react to what Tang Yu said to her. She just stood up and walked out of the tent under the supervision of Tang Yu and others. As they were getting closer to the wall of Yunwu City, the woman discovered that many survivors had gathered there. Those survivors were covered in dust and looked disheveled. They were all the people who helped her plan the bomb attack. Chen Xiumin is familiar with each of them. Chen Xiumin looked them up and down and found no signs of beating or torture on their bodies. But their image is far less clean and tidy than before. Although they lived in humanitarian aid tents at the Xiangqing base before, the Xiangqing base provided them with food and water every day. They will use this clean water to wash their bodies. And now, because they ran so awkwardly and hurriedly when they were caught by the garrison, they were covered in dust. It makes them extremely uncomfortable. When they saw Chen Xiumin coming, the survivors hung their heads, with hidden hatred in their eyes. It's all the fault of that idiot Chen Xiumin. If Chen Xiumin hadn't done something dishonest, he would have blown himself to death. They wouldn't be involved today. Although these stranded survivors were thinking this in their hearts. But they all acted very pitifully, trying to win the sympathy of the garrison by such pitiful gestures. Some people even let out sobbing sounds. They looked innocent and tearful as they looked at the garrison. I hope the garrison can find conscience, let them go, and stop targeting them. Chen Xiumin asked tremblingly. Why are you here? What are the garrisons sending us to do? One of the survivors looked at Chen Xiumin with resentment and deliberately raised his voice so that all the garrisons could hear him. He said, "Why are you so impulsive? Why are you doing this?" Normally, people complain, but no one takes it seriously. Chen Xiumin looked at the man who said this. She seemed to have no idea what he was talking about. Now, listening to what this man said, it seemed as if all this was her fault. But it wasn't like this before. It seems that when everyone joins together to boycott a certain person and has a common imaginary enemy, their group appears to be particularly cohesive. They once supported each other, and during the days when they lost contact with their loved ones, they shared their longing for their loved ones with each other. Their team is extremely integrated. They think of themselves as family members, hate Huami, and stick together to warm each other. But now, some people actually said that although people complain as usual, no one takes such complaints seriously. Chen Xiumin couldn't believe her ears. As it turned out, it wasn't just one person who said this, and soon after, someone else spoke out. They seemed to be eager to distance themselves from Chen Xiumin. Yeah, we never thought that Chen Xiumin would actually make a bomb and attack Huami's two treasures. Although we complain about Huami, the child is innocent, and we have never thought of doing anything to the child. Yes, I also have 2 children. They are now outside the base, and I don't know what's happening to them. How could I bear to harm them? I had known that you had such an extreme personality, I would not have been friends with you. How mentally ill Chen Xiumin was, she now understood what these people meant. She shook her head in disbelief and said desperately, "No, it was you who said that I should take real action. It was you who said that you would delay the garrison for me. You are the ones who encouraged me to do this. Why are you saying this now? Aren't we all family? Didn't we swear to help each other and support each other from now on? You said it yourself, but now you are blaming me for all the mistakes. What on earth do you want to do?" Everyone started talking at once and started to fight back against Chen Xiumin. Commander Tang, this has nothing to do with us. It's all Chen Xiumin's fault. Chen Xiumin acted on her own. They pushed all the faults onto Chen Xiumin, and some even spat at her. "Bah, you vicious woman, it's all your fault."
What are you talking about?
Everyone knows that I love children the most. You are slandering me. Captain Tang, look at me yourself. Do I look like such a vicious person? At this time, how could all those who had supported Chen Xiumin in taking action still have any warmth towards Chen Xiumin? They hated Chen Xiumin to death. No one expected that Chen Xiumin would fail. Everyone thought that if Chen Xiumin dropped a bomb on Gong Yi's wife and children, then Chen Xiumin himself would definitely die in the bomb attack. In the end, the attack failed. Huami did not kill the woman, but let her live. She then followed the clues and arrested all those who had complained about Huami. At the same time that these survivors were distancing themselves from Chen Xiumin and loudly complaining about her, the garrison also captured a number of survivors and drove them over. Tang Yu looked coldly at the survivors who pushed all the responsibility onto Chen Xiumin. "You have always been like this, always putting all the blame on a woman. Why don't you ever think about the fact that you are the ones who caused this?" Tang Yu pointed to a small hole in the wall of Yunwu City and said to the survivors, "Go ahead. Outside this cave is the north of Xiangqing base. You can go see your family and reunite with them." More and more survivors were driven here, at least thousands if not hundreds, and everyone was chattering. It was obvious that it was impossible to put all the blame on Chen Xiumin alone. Someone shouted loudly, "What do you mean by this, Xiangqing base? What did we do wrong? We are just gathering together to complain. Is it not allowed to complain? The world today is developing more and more unbelievably and is far from the freedom we had before the end of the world. Before the end of the world, they can say whatever they want. As a result, after the end of the world, they just complained that Huami closed the Xiangqing base and did not allow outsiders to enter the Xiangqing base. As a result, they were about to be driven out of the Xiangqing base. So the management of Xiangqing base only listens to a woman? Is it just because of a woman's likes and dislikes that the survivors in Xiangqing base come and go? Since one person asked, everyone opened their mouths and spoke. Someone else shouted loudly, "I don't think we did anything wrong. Xiangqing base is a large base after all. How can a woman have the final say on everything? Where's Gong Yi? Where is Commander Gong? Doesn't he care about anything? Did he just watch his wife kick so many of us out of the Xiangqing base because she was unhappy with us complaining about her?" Tang Yu looked at the survivors coldly. "So what do you want? You want to stay here? We provide you with free tents, and you throw bombs at our commander's child?" There was a moment of silence among the crowd, because they seemed to have just remembered that when they were asking Gong Yi to come out and administer justice. In fact, the two children where Chen Xiumin dropped the bomb were not only Huami's children, but also Commander Gong Yi's children. So, if you put yourself in their shoes, they dropped a bomb on Gong Yi's child, and now they want Gong Yi to seek justice for them. This doesn't make sense no matter how you put it. Tang Yu looked at the silent crowd and sneered. "You said that this is because our Xiangqing base is closed and you are not allowed to reunite with your family. Then what did we do wrong by letting you go out and reunite with your family? None of you here have been implicated innocently. All of you have expressed radical dissatisfaction with the Xiangqing base. Since you don't like this place so much, then just leave. We will not care about anything now, and we'll let you go directly. Then you should leave quickly. Don't stay here. Go find your families and reunite with them." Among the survivors, including Chen Xiumin, who made the bomb and threw it at his brother and sister, everyone turned pale when they heard this. They really never thought about leaving the Xiangqing base. They just wanted to make some noise to force the Xiangqing base to retreat, open the Xiangqing base, and let their families in. But Tang Yu didn't listen to them at all. He just waved his hand, and the garrisons came forward, pushing and shoving them, and drove them out of the Yunwu city wall. Of course, these were only the first batch of survivors who were driven out. According to the lists uttered by these survivors, there are still many people waiting to be caught. Huami stood in the distance with a cold expression on her face. She pushed a stroller and watched the survivors crying and screaming as they were driven out of the Xiangqing base. The brother and sister in the stroller were babbling in baby language, and it was unknown what they were communicating. Huami didn't understand. She just looked at the crying survivors with indifference. In fact, being driven out does not mean that these survivors cannot survive. After all, at the Xiangqing base, there are a large number of teams every day who accept tasks from the mission center and go north from the Xiangqing base to complete tasks and kill zombies. These survivors will take a small amount of supplies out of the city. The quantity is small and far from meeting the standard for smuggling supplies out of the city. But Huami knew that some people would take advantage of this loophole and secretly bring goods out of the city in this ant-moving form. Most of them are not transporting supplies to other cities. They just hope to stay outside for a few more days and earn more crystal cores. But there are survivors outside who, with crystal cores, can also exchange them for some supplies from the people of Xiangqing who have accepted the mission. As long as you find a way, there is always a way out. But Chen Xiumin, who used radical means and blew up her brother and sister with a bomb, didn't know whether she would be so lucky after leaving Xiangqing. Whether God would give her a way to survive. Outside the Yunwu city wall, a group of survivors who had just been expelled looked at Chen Xiumin angrily. Chen Xiumin stiffened her neck, looking as if she would never admit her mistake. When everyone saw her like this, they all started to criticize her. Chen Xiumin was in a trance. She looked at the people around her with a very strange look. Some people turned around and wanted to go back into the wall of cloud and mist, but they did not dare to touch the wall of cloud and mist, because they had watched with their own eyes as zombies encountered the misty wall and were instantly turned into powder. How could they dare to get close to this city wall? Even when they were garrisoned and driven out through the small hole in the city wall, they were cautious and did not dare to touch the clouds. Not to mention now, they punched the cloud mist city wall a few times and made a hole in it. Everyone was helpless and could only transfer their hatred to Chen Xiumin. Someone pushed Chen Xiumin and said angrily, "Speak up. You've caused such a big disaster and made Huami unhappy. Now she's taking her anger out on us. Tell me, how are you going to solve this problem?" Others say, looking at the situation now, the person who tied the bell must be the one to untie it. Chen Xiumin, I don't care what you come up with. Just let Huami and Gong Yi open the Yunwu city wall again. Yes, you are responsible for getting us into the Xiangqing base. Otherwise, we will kill you. While he was saying this, another hole opened in the wall of Yunwu city. This time, there were even more survivors being expelled. Everyone saw that they were all familiar people. Aren't they the ones who were usually quite dissatisfied with the Xiangqing base? It seemed that Huami was very angry this time and was ready to catch them all in one fell swoop. A man pointed at Chen Xiumin's face and was so angry that he wanted to kill Chen Xiumin. "Look at what you have done. Kneel down right now in front of this wall of mist and kowtow to Huami to apologize. If she doesn't forgive you, you'll just keep knocking here until Huami is willing to let us return to the Xiangqing base." Chen Xiumin, whose head was beaten into a pig, looked at the man in disbelief, just as the man stretched out his hand to strangle her neck and forced her to kneel down and kowtow to admit her mistake. She suddenly stretched out her hand and pushed the man back. Chen Xiumin looked frantic and shouted loudly, "Is it my fault? Is it all my fault? When I was making explosives, did anyone stop me? Don't you know I'm going to take action? Aren't you the ones who helped divert the garrison's attention so that I have a chance to get close to Huami? When an avalanche comes down, every snowflake is not innocent. This is not just my fault." When she said this, someone immediately thought of themselves. In fact, they are not very familiar with Chen Xiumin. I only learned from Chen Xiumin's teammates that Chen Xiumin wanted to make a bomb and needed some materials. So they tried every possible means to find such materials for Chen Xiumin. Some people actually only know that Chen Xiumin has plans to find 2 children. However, they did not express any objections and even expressed their hatred towards Huami as if it had nothing to do with them. And because of this, they were implicated and expelled from the Xiangqing base. Someone immediately reacted and pointed at several other accomplices of Chen Xiumin. These were Chen Xiumin's real accomplices. They participated at the right time to help Chen Xiumin delay the garrison plan. Everyone said bitterly, "You guys are so close to Chen Xiumin on a daily basis. You guys are really stupid. When she was making bombs, you helped her find raw materials. You are also the culprit. You should also kneel down and kowtow to Huami to apologize." The men who were accused were so angry that they raised their fists and hit the men around them in the face. "Do you blame us? Didn't you help find the raw materials for the bomb?" Everyone turned their accusing eyes to the men who helped find the raw materials for the bomb. "Yeah, aren't you guys just looking for something to do? We're living a good life. Why are you helping me find raw materials for bombs? Aren't you having a hard time in Xiangqing? You have the raw materials for making bombs. Why don't you sell them to Sichuan? Ikuwa collects all kinds of garbage. It's because of you. If you hadn't found the raw materials for the bomb for Chen Xiumin, she wouldn't have been able to make the bomb. It's all because of you. The men who helped to gather the raw materials became angry and started fighting. Outside the Yunwu city wall, a chaotic battle suddenly broke out. Gong Yi stood on the Yunwu city wall, his face full of indifference, looking at the survivors below the wall. For such a small matter, these survivors have all seen blood. Not far away, there are large groups of zombies. Some Xiangqing people who came out of the Xiangqing base to complete the mission are struggling to kill zombies. Some ordinary survivors also built small oases under the cloud wall. They used cars to build a very simple fortress. The supplies in this small oasis were not sufficient, but they were not enough to starve people to death. There are also ordinary survivors who try to hunt for the crystal cores in the zombies' brains and exchange them for supplies from the survivors on missions. Everyone is living a very hard life, but these survivors who have just been expelled from the Xiangqing base are busy fighting. A woman's scream was heard in the melee. It was Chen Xiumin, who was beaten into a pig's head by Huami and threw bombs at her younger brothers and sisters. She was grabbed by the neck by a man and thrown directly towards several zombies on the opposite side. Chen Xiumin shouted wildly and waved her hands. Gong Yi and Huami did not kill her, and even repaid her with kindness, and did not beat her too badly. However, they threw her out of the Cloud Mist City wall, which was a punishment that was even more painful for her than killing her directly. The survivors who were originally fighting each other were blown to death, or injured by Chen Xiumin's bomb with A. Some were even blown away and fell into the zombie tide. The scene was in chaos. Life in the north of Xiangqing is not getting easy either. In addition to the survivors who were expelled from the Xiangqing base, there were still a large number of survivors who remained inside the cloud and mist wall of the Xiangqing base. Because of Huami's outburst, the atmosphere in the entire northern part of Xiangqing base suddenly became a lot more tense than before. Originally, everyone was free and relaxed, staying in their own tents, waiting for the little bit of humanitarian relief supplies sent from the Xiangqing base every day. Now those people, who were transferred by Huami, including Yang Honglin, were trapped in their own tent area. The Xiangqing base no longer allows them to move freely. Anyone who can be found is under investigation. No relief supplies were delivered. The atmosphere in the entire northern Xiangqing base suddenly became extremely solemn. However, they were unable to enter the Xiangqing base on their own. Some people were dissatisfied, and they pointed at Yang Honglin, who came to issue the order, and said, "It's Chen Xiumin's fault. It's Chen Xiumin's fault. You've been investigating for so long and have taken away so many people. Have you found out what we did?" Although they occasionally complained about Huami, but most people are not as radical as Chen Xiumin and his group. Some people have never even seen Chen Xiumin. Therefore, it was only because of Chen Xiumin that the atmosphere in the north of Xiangqing base became so tense. It is reasonable for everyone to feel dissatisfied. A large group of people gathered in front of Yang Honglin's car, talking and expressing their opinions at once, buzzing like a swarm of flies. Yang Honglin stood on the roof of the car, looking indifferently at the survivors who had surrounded his car. Yang Honglin said, "The Xiangqing base is now clearly informing you that if you do not leave Xiangqing, the Xiangqing base will stop providing all humanitarian assistance." This statement was like an explosion in the pot. Some survivors glared at Yang Honglin. "Is this something a human being could do? What on earth did we do wrong? If you do this to us, don't you worry about retribution?" Yang Honglin sneered, took out several large bags of seeds from a snakeskin bag, and said to the survivors, "Then does our Xiangqing base owe you something? We have been providing you with humanitarian aid for such a long time, and yet you are still complaining and expressing dissatisfaction with us. Do we deserve to be taken advantage of? Here, these are the seeds. If you want to eat them, go and plant them yourself. No one has the obligation to tolerate you." In fact, a long time ago, Yang Honglin was also a person full of justice and love. But after the end of the world, the ugly human heart made him feel chilled. Until now, there are still several seriously injured police academy students who have not been released from the rescue center. Their injuries were so severe that even if they were treated with Huami's medical supplies every day, their psychological trauma would take many, many years to heal. Ever since the Xiangqing base was attacked last time, Yang Honglin's thinking has changed. He began to feel how terrible ungrateful people are. Even if these stranded survivors located in the north of Xiangqing base are not from Chen Xiumin's group. However, complaining about Huami and being dissatisfied with the management of Xiangqing base are the mainstream thoughts of this group of people. This is terrible. Once they have such thoughts, this group of people will not be grateful no matter what Xiangqing base does. They all feel that no matter how much the Xiangqing base does for them, it is what they deserve. Once their emotions accumulate to a certain level, they will become quite radical with a little provocation from the outside world. Will do terrible, terrible things. This is a very terrifying force, so why should Xiangqing base tolerate these people? Nothing is as it should be. The seeds were scattered by Yang Honglin and thrown to the survivors. But no survivor was willing to take the seeds. They were extremely panicked, and hidden deep in their hearts, their dissatisfaction with the Xiangqing base was growing stronger. However, faced with Yang Honglin's tough attitude, none of the survivors dared to speak out in protest. It is obvious that the Xiangqing base is trying to hit them. If they really resisted at this time, they would actually not be able to defeat the people from the Xiangqing base. However, if they accept these seeds, the The Xiangqing base will ask them to farm in the future and will no longer provide them with any humanitarian assistance. The survivors fell silent one by one. Deathly silence. They all lowered their heads and eyes at the same time, hiding the hatred in their eyes. It seems that this matter has no solution until now. Yang Honglin didn't want to say anything more to them. He jumped off the roof of his car, got into it, and drove away from Xiangqing Base north with a cold look on his face. He still has a lot to do. As soon as Yang Honglin left, the remaining survivors began to whisper to each other. Some looked terrified. What should we do now? It looks like Xiangqing Base really doesn't intend to take care of us anymore. The relief supplies for lunch today have not been delivered yet. I am still hungry. Some people looked like dead pigs that were not afraid of boiling water. How can they really starve us to death? Don't worry, they're just trying to scare us. When we are almost starving, they will send us supplies and intimidate us. I have long known the methods of these people. Despite saying this, most people in the northern part of Xiangqing Base still seem very worried. They gathered together and began to talk about the ruthlessness and heartlessness of the Xiangqing Base. And the ignorance of this woman Huami. Suddenly, a survivor stumbled and waved his hand at everyone, saying, "Have you heard? The contractor has produced a blueprint. He wants to build a city wall, and the red line of the city wall actually excludes our area from the Xiangqing Base." Her words caused a roar from the crowd. Someone pushed through the crowd in disbelief and came over to ask, "What nonsense are you talking about? We are in the Xiangqing Base. Is this true? Who told you this? If the contractor's red line of the city wall has drawn them out of the Xiangqing Base, then what is the difference between this and driving them out of the Xiangqing Base? But the cloud wall has already included us in the Xiangqing Base. Now there is another red line of the contractor's city wall. What about our area? Doesn't this put us between the red line of the city wall and the cloud and mist city wall?" After hearing what this man said, everyone did not feel too panicked. After all, the area between the red line of the city wall and the cloud and mist wall was still safe. Mountains and seas of zombies outside the Xiangqing Base. This area at least has no threat from zombies. But then, someone else said with a pale face, if the city wall is really built, the magical wall of clouds and mist can be dismantled at any time. After all, that wall of mist that no one can touch was formed by the materialization of Gong Yi's spiritual power. In fact, it is as illusory as clouds and mist. If Gong Yi ignores the city wall for a few days, the wall will slowly become thinner. In time, this city wall will be blown away by the wind and disappear between heaven and earth. So once the contractor is asked to build the red line of the city wall, after Gong Yi's cloud wall was removed, they were still excluded from the Xiangqing Base. Someone cursed loudly. How come the people in Xiangqing Base are more treacherous than each other? This contractor is really something. I thought he was a nice guy before, but how could he do such a wicked thing now? Someone said sarcastically, after all, it was not the woman named Huami who instigated it. If she hadn't come up with some bad ideas, we wouldn't be in such an embarrassing situation today. So, what should we do now? Otherwise, we should all go and talk to Gong Yi. We really can't let his wife continue to do this recklessly. Everyone discussed it among themselves, and at first, everyone said that they should elect a few people to act as representatives to negotiate with Gong Yi. However, when it comes to who is going, everyone shakes their heads. After all, Chen Xiumei's incident is a lesson for us. It is said that the first bird to stick its head out gets shot, and this is true. If the negotiations fail and the representative who came forward to negotiate was angry with Gong Yi and thrown out of the Xiangqing Base, wouldn't that be a loss? It seemed that no candidate could be chosen for this matter. In the end, all the survivors decided to go find Gong Yi together. Everyone went to the wall of Yunwu City in a mighty manner to seek justice from Gong Yi. A dozen or so survivors were left on the spot, silently picking up the seeds on the ground and gritted their teeth to carry the seeds back to their tents. No one knows what these few dozen survivors are thinking. I just feel like they're not very sociable. But at this time, they were unwilling to follow the crowd, so everyone could only let these few dozen survivors do their own thing. A large number of stranded survivors ran to the Yunwu City wall to find Gong Yi. But Gong Yi has already returned to Huami and the child. Huami and her brother and sister were arranged to stay in the garrison camp. Because of the attack by Chun Shumin, Gong Yi made a temporary decision to ask the contractor not to repair Diamond's house anymore and give it to his wife and children. He asked Huami to get a luxury RV and place it in the garrison camp. His 2 children were also raised in the garrison camp. After Gong Yi returned to the luxury RV to take care of the 2 children, Huami found an excuse to run to the toilet in the garrison camp. I'm going to use the bathroom, a really big bathroom. Don't wait for me. You can take care of the baby and sleep. When she said this, Gong Yi turned his head and rolled his eyes at Huami. A blatant roll of the eyes. Huami pretended not to see it, turned around and ran. She set up a teleportation point in the public toilet of the garrison camp. With a flash, he flew back to the back door of City D from the toilet of the garrison camp. After not being here for a few days, the back door of City D has been filled with electric fences by Guose and Lin Jigang. Seeing Huami suddenly appear, Guose didn't think twice and drew his sword across. Huami leaned back and avoided Guose's sword. She scolded Guose, "What are you doing? You're killing one of your own." Guose stuck the handle of the knife into the ground, looked at Huami and said, "What should I do? Aren't you just going back to feed your child? It's been several days. The 2 of us are here, and we've almost built this place into a fortress." She and Lin Jigang only relied on a large bundle of electric nets left by Huami and a pile of energy drops mixed with jelly stones. In spite of everything, I have been guarding this small teleportation point for several days. It's already quite difficult. If Huami didn't come again, Guose planned to leave Lin Jigang alone and return to her safe zone. There is sufficient electric grid in her safe zone, and several luxury RVs are parked there. Those luxury RVs contain a large amount of supplies that Guose has stockpiled. There are also quite a few energy drops. However, Guose's abilities are limited, and she can move through the zombie tide effortlessly by herself. If we bring Lin Jigang along, it will be very difficult to move. She could only leave Lin Jigang behind and go back by herself. Huami smiled and said to Guose, "Thank you for your hard work. I brought you a lot of good things." As she spoke, she pulled out a large backpack from behind her. The backpack is filled with food and supplies, as well as energy drops. Guose took a look at the supplies in the backpack, and a look of satisfaction appeared on his face. She took out 4 yellow peaches from her backpack, threw 2 to Lin Jigang, and kept 2 for herself. Guose took a bite of the yellow peach and asked Huami, "What are you going to do next? I heard from Dr. Lin that you plan to take him to City F." Huami turned around and looked in the direction of leaving the city. We are now in the north of Xiangqing Base. If we want to go to F City, we have to go to the south of Xiangqing Base. We will definitely have to go around Xiangqing Base for most of the way. As she spoke, Huami turned her head to look at Lin Jigang. She rummaged around in her sleeves and pulled out a long knife. Don't ask her why she could take out a long knife from her sleeve. Asking is like performing magic. Huami threw the long knife to Lin Jigang. "I will only send you, Dr. Lin, to City E. You have to walk the rest of the way to City F by yourself." Lin Jigang was hit by the long knife that Huami threw at him. Being hit by this heavy long sword hurt so much. He hurriedly grabbed the long knife that Huami gave him, carefully avoiding the sharp blade, and looked at Huami in panic. Huami means that she will never send him all the way? Lin Jigang felt deeply lost. But she has a husband and children. Why should she send him off the whole way? To be honest, Huami was able to send him out of Xiangqing and protected him from the center of D City all the way to the back door of D City. This was already a way of taking care of Lin Jigang. Lin Jigang can't ask for too much. He nodded heavily, with a determined look in his eyes. "I have been calling my father these past few days, but his phone went from no one answering to being turned off now. Something must have happened to my dad. He's never been like this before. I must go back." He didn't make any vows to Huami. Because in the last days, any oath spoken with the mouth seems very empty. Lin Jigang only needs to express his determination through actions. He wants to go back, and he must go back. Huami nodded, turned around, took one last look at the small safe zone in City D, and took the lead in killing their way out. Guo took 2 steps forward and looked at Huami's back. He raised his hand and patted Lin Jigang on the shoulder. Don't force yourself. I also had a hard time killing zombies at first, but it got better over time. After all, this is already a new era. While we specialize in our profession, we should also become good zombie killers. After saying that, Guo also followed Huami and rushed out to kill. The 3 of them fought their way out of City D and headed directly east. City E was located to the east of Xiangqing Base. By the late night, almost 4 hours had passed, and they were about to leave City D. Guo stopped and looked at Huami without saying anything. Huami waved the long sword in her hand, turned to look at Guo, raised her eyebrows and asked, "You still don't want to leave D City?" She knew that maybe by leaving City D, she could escape from the zombie tide, and maybe by leaving City D, her life would have a different beginning. But ever since she and Ni Shuewen broke up in City D, Guo's life seemed to have stayed in City D. She didn't feel very sad. Even when she was killing zombies in City D, she rarely thought of Ni Shuewen. But if Guo was asked to leave City D and go somewhere else, she seemed stuck and refused to take a step out of City D. No matter how difficult life is in City D, even the entire City D has now become a small, in the zombie trend. There are no survivors who would come to City D to kill zombies. Guo just didn't want to leave City D. In view of this situation, Huami opened her mouth slightly, but she still said, "I respect your choice. With your current ability, you don't need to stay in City D, and you won't lack various daily necessities and food and drink. If one day you want to leave City D, just tell me, and I'll set off firecrackers to pick you up." The greater a person's abilities are, the better his life will be than that of ordinary people. Guo may not be as good as Huami in killing zombies, but she can now move freely among the zombie tides by herself. This is also a very important ability. Guo smiled and nodded, then waved to Huami and Lin Jigang. Lin Jigang looked behind Guo and saw the City D filled with roaring zombies. He originally wanted to say something to Guo, but after opening his mouth, Lin Jigang found that there seemed to be nothing to say. Life in this world is too difficult nowadays, and no one knows where someone will die. Maybe one day they will have the chance to meet again, maybe one day they will be like this. Perhaps this is his final farewell to Guo. "Let's go." Huami walked forward, holding the knife in her hand. Lin Jigang took one last look at Guo, followed Huami and killed the zombies all the way. Guo Southeast stood at the place where City D was out of bounds, looked at their backs from afar, and waved his hand. Until the 2 people killing zombies were no longer seen, Guo turned around and went to the safe zone of City D to kill alone. Huami and Lin Jigang killed for another half an hour. They entered a ruined building on the outskirts of the city. As soon as he entered, the zombies behind him immediately surrounded the ruins. Huami looked at the dark ruins. She pointed at a pile of electric grids and a pile of energy drops mixed with jelly stones in the corner and said to Lin Jigang, "I have to go back to take care of the kids now. You're here by yourself. This is the power grid, and there are energy drops, enough for you to use for more than half a month. You put these electric nets on the doors and windows of the ruins, as well as all the loopholes." Lin Jigang's eyes were a little panicked. "Are you leaving too? Are you going to leave me here alone?" There is also a teleportation point here, which surprised Lin Jigang very much. But he was in no mood to think about anything more. He suddenly felt very scared. He stood in the ruins and looked at Huami pitifully. From childhood to adulthood, Lin Jigang has never felt so lonely and afraid. Because of his good family background and good knowledge, Lin Jigang has been very popular since he was a child. He is always surrounded by a large group of friends. "I have never been so alone as I am now." But looking at his current situation, he doesn't know whether his father is alive or dead, and Guo, who had a life and death friendship with him, left him not long ago for personal reasons. Even now, Huami, who is like a guardian angel in his mind, is about to leave him. Lin Jigang felt like a child who was about to leave the place and people who made him feel safe and face the unknown and cruel world alone. He shook his head, and there was even pleading in his eyes, hoping that Huami would not choose to leave at this time. But Huami raised her hand and patted Lin Jigang on the shoulder. You chose to come out. Since you have chosen this path, you must be mentally prepared. The world outside is so cruel. You can't rely on anyone, including me and your father. You have to walk this road to the end of the world alone. No matter how difficult it is, you still have to keep going. Besides, it's very safe here now. You still have the power grid and energy drops. These things are sufficient. I still have my own children to raise, right? It doesn't make sense for me to stay here and take care of you while ignoring my children. There was some struggle in Lin Jigang's eyes. He knew the truth. It must be this truth. He just felt panic, so he asked Huami with difficulty, "What if you can't come back in half a month?" "If I don't come back in half a month, you'll fight your way out all the way to City F." Huami pointed to the long knife in Lin Jigang's hand. "I have already given you the knife. This is your only support from now on." "Who hasn't come this way? Didn't Guisei come this way as well?" After saying this, Huami flew back to the Xiangqing base without any reluctance and went to the toilet in the garrison camp. At this time, it was almost dawn. Lin Jigang felt extremely uncomfortable, and this feeling had nothing to do with love. But he finally realized that he might have to walk the future path alone. He tightened the long knife in his hand, and when he reacted belatedly, zombies had already crawled into the ruins through the broken window. Lin Jigang hurriedly picked up the knife and went up to chop off the zombie that crawled into the ruins. Then, in a panic, he pasted the electric fence on the broken window. The work of building this power grid is very simple. Lin Jigang, a top student, has been setting up the power grid with Guisei in the past few days, and he has already become familiar with the technology of building the power grid. He quickly patched up the hole with an electric grid and then sat down against the wall with a look of embarrassment on his body, covered in sweat. Under the hazy sky, zombies roared one after another outside the ruins. Lin Jigang spent an unspeakable 24 hours half asleep and very exhausted. He felt like these 24 hours had passed a lifetime. And when night fell again, he no longer knew how many zombies he had killed, how many zombies crawled in from the holes in the ruins, and how many times he had repaired the power grid. Finally, all the holes in the ruins were filled. Just when Lin Jigang breathed a sigh of relief, his cell phone rang. Lin Jigang was stunned for a moment, then hurriedly walked to his backpack and took out his cell phone. He was very familiar with the ringtone of the cell phone. It was the incoming call alert tone of his father. Lin Jigang breathed a sigh of relief. Looking at the phone screen, he saw his father's caller ID. He picked up the phone and asked in a reproachful tone, "Dad, why didn't you contact me for so long?" There was a brief silence on the other end of the phone, and then Chun Hu's voice came out. "Your father is in my hands now." Lin Jigang paused and asked hurriedly, "Who are you? What do you want to do? What did you do to my father?" Don't worry. Chun Hu laughed, his voice gentle, and he said softly to Lin Jigang, "I didn't intend to do anything to your father, but your father is a little disobedient. In order to make him obedient, I will make your father unable to speak forever. Sorry, I hit you a little too hard, it's just my habit. Come, let me show you your father's voice." There was a burst of noise on the phone, and then the sound of Lin Xia screaming desperately was heard. Lin Jigang frowned. He listened to Lin Xia's roar and felt that there seemed to be something wrong with Lin Xia's tongue. The man who held his father hostage cut off his father's tongue? Lin Jigang was immediately enraged, and he yelled into the phone, "What do you want to do? Don't do anything to my dad. If anything happens to my dad, I will never let you go. No matter who you are, I will kill you even if it takes me all my life. I will. Chun Hu seemed to be accustomed to such incompetent threats. How many people had he killed and how many evil things had he done in his life? Almost everyone who has been harmed by him will say the same thing to him. But was Chun Hu afraid? Did he care? Every time he heard such words, he couldn't help but find it funny. These people are under his feet, and they will never have a chance to turn around and get up. Hearing Chun Hu's laughter, Lin Jigang scratched his hair in annoyance because of his incompetence and because Chun Hu seemed too calm. It seemed as if everything was under Chun-Hu's control. Lin Jigang has already lost psychologically. He said to Chun-Hu with resentment and helplessness, "What do you want?" I heard some signs of compromise in Lin Jigang's tone. Chun-Hu knew that Lin Jigang was about to surrender. As long as Chun-Hu can grasp the weaknesses of this kind of people, he can turn them into his minions. Chun-Hu just laughed and said to Lin Jigang, "I heard from your father that you have been very outstanding since you were a child, and now you are working in the rescue center of Xiangqing Base." When Lin Jigang heard what Chun-Hu said, he immediately said vigilantly, "I will not help you steal the energy drop." He once heard from his father that Chun-Hu's mother was terminally ill and now urgently needed to get energy drops. Lin Jigang advised Chun-Hu on the phone, "Your mother is obviously at the end of her life. It won't do her any good if you keep her here. Everything will turn into its opposite when it reaches its extreme. I think as a boss of such a big business, you must know this." On the other end of the phone, Chun-Hu said coldly, "Don't bother Dr. Lin. This is my own mother. Don't I have the ability to help her live longer?" In fact, Chun-Hu has been using zombie crystal cores on his mother recently. His mother also survived. Although his mother had been lying unconscious in bed, at least her heart was beating and she was breathing. As for what Lin Jigang said about everything turning into its opposite when it reaches its extreme, this was a truth from many years ago. Now, in this end times, there is no need to talk about the saying everything turning into its opposite when it reaches its extreme. Just survive. He said on the other end of the phone, "I don't want Dr. Chen to go to great lengths to smuggle energy drops out of the city for me. I have now found a replacement that will keep my mother alive. Dr. Lin only needs to do one thing for me. Either kill Huami or steal one of Huami's children for me. As long as Dr. Lin can do one of these two things, I will return Dr. Lin's father to you." Lin Jigang said loudly in disbelief, "I can't accomplish either of the two things you mentioned. Think about it yourself. What is Huami's skill, and what is my skill? If I had half of Huami's skills, I wouldn't have to be a doctor in Xiangqing Base. Now I work as a doctor in the Xiangqing Base, but I don't earn as much as I would if I took on missions to kill zombies at the mission center. The medical staff in the Xiangqing Base all receive a fixed salary. Although they have no worries about supplies for a month, they still have hundreds of thousands of shopping cards given to them every month. But that's all their future holds. I want to make another breakthrough, do something big, and become successful. There is absolutely no way. But those people from Xiangqing who accepted tasks at the mission center earned much more. Every time they go out to kill zombies, they can easily bring back half a sack of crystal cores. A bag of crystal cores can be recharged into shopping cards, some of which can be exchanged for shopping cards worth millions. So, what ability does Lin Jigang have? He can't even kill zombies. How did he kill Huami? On the phone, Chun-Hu was not surprised by Lin Jigang's retreat. He said to Lin Jigang, "If you can't kill Huami, then give me one of Huami's children. I don't care what method you use. She destroyed my family and forced me to this point. It's not too much for me to have a child from her." After saying this, Chun-Hu decisively hung up the phone, leaving Lin Jigang alone sitting in the ruins.
He was stunned for a long time.
After he reacted, Lin Jigang hurriedly picked up his mobile phone and called his father back. However, Chun-Hu did not answer Lin Jigang's calls again. No matter how many times Lin Jigang called, there was always a busy tone. It seems that Chun-Hu is forcing Lin Jigang to choose between the two. Lin Jigang sat in the ruins for an unknown amount of time. Maybe it was just a moment, or maybe several hours had passed. When Huami saw Lin Jigang again, his hair had turned gray.
Huami was surprised.
She looked at Lin Jigang like this and asked uncertainly, "What happened to you? Did you overuse your brain, or did you activate some special ability?" Sitting in the ruins, Lin Jigang raised his unclear eyes and looked in the direction of Huami. His pupils could not focus, and he looked at Huami absent-mindedly for a long time before he regained his consciousness and said in a daze, "Oh, you are here." Huami narrowed her eyes slightly and looked at Lin Jigang, who looked a little strange. She wanted to say something, but in the end she said nothing. Huami only inspected the small safe zone in the ruins built by Lin Jigang. Huami raised her wrist and looked at the watch on her hand. She said to Lin Jigang, "I only have half a night now. My husband is watching me very closely. Let's get out of here quickly. Let's talk about it when we get to the next safe zone." As soon as she finished speaking, Huami opened the power grid of the ruined safe zone, came out of the grid, and killed her way out. Behind her, Lin Jigang calmed himself down, with a pale face, and followed Huami to kill. On the way, Lin Jigang asked Huami, "What about the supplies that were placed in the ruins?" When Huami returned to Xiangqing, she prepared enough supplies for Lin Jigang to last him for more than half a month, as well as energy drops. Only a few days had passed, and Lin Jigang had been eating very frugally these days. So there are still a lot of supplies in that ruined safe zone. Huami was killing zombies all the way in front, and took the time to answer Lin Jigang. "Leave it there. Maybe someone who desperately wants to live will find the ruins. They will get some breathing time in that safe zone that you created with your own hands. The supplies you left behind might save their lives." Lin Jigang, who was following behind Huami, stopped killing the zombies. He stared at Huami's back, perhaps after Huami said these words. Lin Ji just now suddenly realized that this woman Huami is actually not as cruel and ruthless as everyone says. She also has her benevolent and righteous side, but her benevolence and righteousness seems so hidden in the end times filled with darkness and meanness. After Huami and Lin Jigang had been killing for 4 hours, they reached the next broken town. She found a secluded ruin. Huami pointed to a very inconspicuous, narrow, and dark gap in the ruins of the building and said to Lin Jigang, "Based on my experience, there should be a safe zone inside. You should go in first and see if there is any danger inside. There will always be a stable open space among some collapsed ruins where zombies, various mutated plants, and animals cannot enter either. The survivors call this place a safe zone." As he spoke, Huami raised his hand and threw a flashlight into the ruins. Just as Lin Jigang's sight followed the flashlight into the narrow gap, Huami threw a huge bag into the gap from behind Lin Jigang. She told Lin Jigang, "Inside this bag are electric grids, energy droplets, and jelly stones. Next, you will build a small, electric-powered safety zone here. I won't explain the process to you, but you know all the precautions." Huami said this as she followed Lin Jigang into the ruins. The ruins are quite safe, but there are too many zombies outside the ruins. In fact, Huami and Lin Jigang had been killing zombies for 4 hours, and they were not far from City D. If Lin Jigang proposed to go back at this time, it would not be too late. He couldn't kill Huami, but he could go back to Xiangqing and steal Huami's child for Chernhu, which was relatively easy to do. Lin Jigang was in a daze. After Huami entered the gap again, she found a lot of supplies in the corner. Lin Jigang opened the package and installed an electric fence at the entrance of the gap. He turned around and asked Huami, "We have been here for so many days and we are still in the zombie crisis. At this rate, how long will it take us to leave here and get out of the zombie tide?" Huami found a random place to sit and rest. She glanced at Lin Jigang, closed her eyes, and said tiredly, "It's basically impossible for you to get out of the zombie tide in a short time. No one can get through the entire zombie horde and get out safely in just a few days. Look at those survivors who have gone through so much hardship and finally managed to fight their way from the outskirts of the zombie tide to the edge of Xiangqing. They all have teams. A small team won't do. We need a large team of several hundred people to work together and make it to the edge of Xiangqing to live. How long have you been gone? Be prepared for half a year." Huami is not exaggerating. Lin Jigang has been in the Xiangqing base since the end of the world. This was the first time in his true sense that he had seen what the world outside Xiangqing was like. Therefore, considering Lin Jigang's fighting ability, Huami's estimate of half a year for him might be overestimating Lin Jigang. As an ordinary person, Lin Jigang's already distraught face turned even paler when he heard Huami's words. With his short white hair, he looks as miserable as a wandering ghost. Lin Jigang slowly turned around and looked at Huami sitting on the ground with her eyes closed and resting. He tightened the long sword in his hand, and his voice suddenly became extremely low. "Miss Hua, you also know why I left Xiangqing." Huami didn't open her eyes, but just said nonchalantly, "I know. You are trying to save your father. Lin Jigang held the long knife in his hand and slowly took 2 steps towards Huami outside the ruins. There were the roars of zombies. It's such a narrow gap that it's quite difficult for a zombie with low IQ to squeeze into it with other zombies. In a short period of time, Lin Jigang realized that the ruins Huami found were safer than the previous ruins. She is really a person who is very suitable to survive in the end times. In such a huge tide of zombies, Huami can find a safe place and establish a small safe zone. If you want to kill her, you must do so when she is off guard. Lin Jigang looked at Huami, seemingly defenseless. He took a few more steps towards Huami, his voice becoming heavier. I know my own abilities. If I could get out of this huge zombie horde in half a year, I'm afraid my father would have already met with an accident. Huami, with her eyes closed, couldn't help but sneer. She did not answer Lin Jigang. No one knows what Huami is thinking at this moment. The atmosphere was heavy, and people's hearts became increasingly ugly. It was not until Lin Jigang raised the long knife in his trembling hand and placed the knife on Huami's neck that Huami slowly opened her eyes. She still sat on the ground with clear eyes, a hint of sarcasm on her lips, looking at Lin Jigang with red eyes. What's the point of just putting a knife on my neck? Wouldn't it be better if you just cut me off? With your indecisive personality, I can kill you in a minute. Isn't it said that villains die because they talk too much? Lin Jigang is too indecisive. He has already put the knife on Huami's neck. What is he still thinking? Why not just act quickly? Huami really didn't understand Lin Jigang's hesitation at this moment. Lin Jigang's hand holding the long knife was shaking even more violently. His eyes were filled with tears. Through his hazy vision, Lin Jigang looked at Huami. But I can't do it. I have thought about choosing one of the 2 conditions given by Chen Hu. I have no choice but to go back to Xiangqing and take action against those 2 innocent children. Then I can only think about the second condition. Killing you will save my father. But Lin Jigang had already put the knife on Huami's neck. He remembered a lot of things. He remembered this woman. Although she had a stern face all the time, she saved Lin Jigang from the brink of danger countless times in the zombie tide. If Huami hadn't protected him and walked him here, Lin Jigang would have died somewhere long ago. Huami is a strong woman, and she is also the mother of 2 children. She was fighting zombies outside, and when the time came, she would fly back to Xiangqing to take care of her 2 children. She never missed spending time with her children. But it's not just about hiding behind Gong Yi and enjoying his protection. Huami is a woman who works very hard to live. And she is a kind woman. Lin Jigang saw all of this. So how could Lin Jigang have the heart to do this to such a kind-hearted mother who is useful to the environment and society? Huami listened to Lin Jigang's mumbling. She frowned slightly and asked, So what you mean is that Chen Hu ran to your F-city and kidnapped your father? And Chen Hu put forward 2 conditions to you. Either you kill my child or you kill me. Lin Jigang yelled at Huami. No, Chen Hu doesn't want the lives of your 2 children. He wants me to take one of your children and raise it for him. Chen Hu has no children. He believes that Huami and Gong Yi have harmed him to the point where he is today. As compensation, it is understandable that Huami and Gong Yi give him a child to raise. Of course, Chen Hu still wants to save both Huami and Gong Yi. So Chen Hu proposed these 2 conditions to Lin Jigang. If one of them was met, Chen Hu would spare Lin Xia's life. There was anger in Huami's eyes. She stood up from the ground with the long knife in Lin Jigang's hand still on her shoulder. Huami impatiently swept away Lin Jigang's long knife. She looked at Lin Jigang, who was holding the long knife, and staggered. This Dr. Lin was incredibly weak. Even women like Guisei gradually become stronger after killing a bunch of zombies. But Lin Jigang is different. He has been killing zombies for such a long time, but his strength is still weak. The growth of combat effectiveness is really too slow. With such fighting power, Lin Jigang still wanted to kill Huami. What should Huami say? You actually seriously thought about helping Chen Hu take away one of my children? Huami kicked Lin Jigang in anger. No one can take my child away. If anyone touches my child, I will grind them to dust. She looked at Lin Jigang, who was in pain, and dropped the long knife. She hugged her head and squatted down in despair. I can't do anything. I can't harm your two innocent children. I know everything. Why didn't I know? What good can these two children do if they fall into Chun Hu's hands? I can't kill you either. You are a good person, but is my father a complete villain? Neither is my father. People's personalities are multifaceted. Lin Xia, the management commander of F City, chose to stand by and watch when Chu Xiang and Chun Hu from E City launched a surprise attack on Xiangqing. Lin Xia was a little unkind in this matter. But can we say that Lin Xia is a bad person who has committed many evil deeds? He is not. Was he so sinful that he had to die? Moreover, he fell into the hands of Chun Hu and was tortured to death by Chun Hu. That is required of a superior. They will not do anything that has no benefit. Unable to see the situation clearly, they will not easily give up their bets. Especially at this time of the end of the world, those in power have to tread on thin ice. Every decision they make requires a lot of thought. My father also wants to work hard to build F City into the largest fortress in the end times. You can laugh at him for overestimating his own abilities, but he also saved a lot of survivors. There are also many survivors in our F City who have been given a chance to survive there. No matter what he did, his crime does not deserve death. Lin Jigang was in great pain. He still squatted down and held his head. He said to Huami in pain, "What do you want me to do? What choice do you want me to make? If I let you and your child go, my father will die. But how could I harm a mother and two babies? What should I choose?"
He was just an ordinary man.
Even after the end of the world, he didn't even have any special powers. How could a man like him save his father? How could he have both? Lin Jigang, who was squatting on the ground, suddenly raised his face. In the dim light, his face was ashen, and he said to Huami, who was looking at him coldly, "Given your personality, you will definitely not let go of someone as ruthless and ungrateful as me. You helped me wholeheartedly and took me with you to get out of this zombie horde, but I put a knife on your neck. I am an ungrateful and despicable person. Or you can just kill me now. If you kill me, I won't have to face such a painful, devastating end of the world. I don't have to make such a difficult choice." Huami leaned back, found a stone, leaned against it, and said coldly, "It's easy to die. In the end times, it's really a very simple thing for a person to want to die. It's harder to live than to die. It's always like this. You think life is too painful and difficult, but have you ever thought about what will happen to your father after you die? Who will save him? If your father is killed by Chun Hu, it will be all over. But Chun Hu is obviously not the kind of person who would let you and your father go easily. Have you ever thought about what kind of torture your father would suffer in Chun Hu's hands? I think it must be worse than death." With every word Huami said, Lin Jigang's face turned paler. After she finished speaking, Lin Jigang's pain deepened. He grabbed his white hair and pulled it out strand by strand. "So now I can't even choose to die? What should I do? What should I do?" Huami said in a cold voice. Her voice was like a demon from Hades, revealing a terrifying meaning. "When Chun Hu calls you again, tell him directly that you have a way to take one of my children away. You asked Chun Hu to come and pick me up. Doesn't he want my child? Then he has to make some efforts. Tell him that you want to smuggle a child out of Xiangqing and successfully escape the pursuit of Gong, Yi, and me, and deliver the child to him. You can't do it by your own strength. Tell him again that the best you can do is send the child outside of E City. He doesn't know that you have already left Xiangqing. Ask him to bring your father along when he comes to pick up the child. If your father died, you would never let him have his way. In order to achieve his goal, Chun Hu will definitely keep your father alive and well." But Lin Jigang felt that this plan was full of loopholes. They wanted to trick Chun Hu out of F City and into E City. Would Chun Hu believe it? He grabbed his hair and asked Huami with red eyes, "Should we make the plan more detailed and thorough? I always feel that this plan is too clumsy." Chun Hu is such a smart person, he won't believe it. Huami snorted. How many bargaining chips does he have now? It's not up to him to believe it or not. Even if he doesn't believe it, he doesn't have the manpower or resources to verify the authenticity of this news. Everyone knows what he wants to do with my child. The Xiangqing base cannot be defeated. He wants to take my child as a hostage. The child is in his hands. Gong Yi, and I don't dare to kill him. No matter how many loopholes there are in your words, he will definitely come to find you. There is no doubt about it. Lin Jigang finally lowered his head. He had no other choice now and could only do as Huami said. Then, Lin Jigang choked up and said, I don't know when Chun who will call me. He turned off my dad's phone.
What can I do now?
I can't just sit there and wait for him to contact me. I'll go crazy. He was too worried about his father. He couldn't bear the fact that his father suffered at the hands of Chun who. Try your best to fight your way out and become stronger, until you become strong enough to rescue your father from Chun Hu's clutches by stomping your feet. Then you will naturally escape the fate of being chosen. Huami looked at the electric grid on the gap. Lin Jigang had at least one advantage. His technique in attaching electric grids was quite good. Dr. Lin, you're already an adult. You should know that only children make choices, while adults don't need to make choices. They want everything. Lin Jigang looked dazed, and he kept chewing on Huami's words. What did he want now? He wanted his father to live with him, and he didn't want to harm Huami's two children, nor did he want to kill Huami. So he has to become stronger. Only when he becomes stronger can he do whatever he wants, and Sharon who will not be able to control him. Lin Jigang stood up, raised his sleeves, and wiped the tears from his face with his dirty sleeves. Then he bowed deeply to Huami. I'm sorry, Miss Hua. I shouldn't have put the knife to your neck just now. I hope you can forgive me. Huami waved her hand. I know you can't kill me, and you won't kill me. Otherwise, when you came towards me with the knife in your hand, you would have already turned into a pool of meat paste. A pool of meat paste chopped into pieces by Huami. A ray of light gradually appeared from the gap. Huami yawned and said to Lin Jigang, No, my husband is going to get mad. I'm going back. After saying that, Huami turned around and went back to the public toilet in the garrison camp. The first one to react was Fang Yuqi. He couldn't help but use the basin in his hand to cover his face. But after thinking for a while, he thought, what's the point of covering his face? He took the wash basin off his face, covering his lower body in shorts, and saluted Huami with a shocked look on his face. Sister Hua, good morning. The garrisons in shorts all covered their shorts, saluted Huami, and shouted, Sister Hua, good morning. Huami nodded nonchalantly to Fang Yuqi and the stunned guards behind him, then swaggered out of the public toilet. Walk towards your luxury RV. As long as she is not embarrassed, it must be someone else who is embarrassed. As soon as she entered the door of the luxury RV, Huami, whose face was thicker than a city wall, saw Gong Yi in pajamas, lying on the edge of the bed, gently patting the two little babies. Seeing Huami entering the RV, Gong Yi sat up, gave Huami a cold look, and whispered, How did you know to come back? I thought you fell into the toilet. Huami smiled at Gong Yi embarrassedly, walked over quietly, and took a look at the baby, who was sleeping in a spread eagle position on the bed. She immediately complained to Gong Yi. Why is there only a men's restroom in this public restroom? Why is there no women's restroom? Because there was no women's restroom, she made a big mistake in the morning. She just dodged and went straight into the men's restroom. Gong Yi sneered, Look at this place for yourself. Why are there male and female toilets? Originally, Huami ran to the public toilet in the middle of the night yesterday, and Gong Yi was about to remind Huami. She had to come back early, but she always procrastinated and came back at dawn, which meant she would definitely run into the garrisons when they were all getting up. But Gong Yi thought that Huami had left him and his two children behind and went out to become a night wanderer. Gong Yi felt an inexplicable resentment in his heart. He just refused to tell Huami that there were no separate toilets for men and women in the garrison camp. He just watched Huami make such a big fool of herself. Gong Yi actually felt very refreshed. It's time to teach Huami a lesson. She should remember that she is now a married woman. Huami smiled awkwardly, took 2 steps towards Gong Yi and said, Hey, if we are like this, our relationship will be strained, and it will be bad for our children's education. I'm telling you, Gong Yi, you have to let go of your prejudice against me. I'm a very serious woman. You can't tease me like this. Before she could finish her words, Gong Yi, who was originally sitting on the bed, suddenly stood up and walked towards Huami. Huami retreated cautiously all the way to the sofa in the RV. She fell onto the sofa and watched Gong Yi lean over. Huami suddenly seemed to stutter a little and whispered, "What? A gentleman should use words instead of fists. Domestic violence is not acceptable. If children see their parents being violent, they will follow their example in the future." Gong Yi placed his hands on both sides of Hua Mi's cheeks. He lowered his head and pursed his lips as he looked at Huami, wanting to see what else Huami could spit out from her mouth. Isn't this the right time in the world? In the future, strength will be respected in this world. Haven't you always believed in solving problems by fighting? As he said this, Gong Yi moved closer to Huami little by little. His knees were pressed on the sofa next to Huami, and his whole body leaned towards Huami. It was at this moment that Huami suddenly noticed the ambiguous atmosphere. Gong Yi didn't really want to beat her up, he might want to do something else. Huami just had this thought, but her body acted faster than her brain. She wrapped her arms around Gong Yi's waist and pressed him down on the sofa. Gong Yi had no intention of resisting at all, even though his fighting ability was much higher than Huami's. However, Huami easily pushed him down onto the sofa, and there was even a hint of inexplicable tenderness in his eyes. Huami's knees were pressed against Gong Yi's waist and abdomen. She was like a female bully, raising her hand to grab Gong Yi's collar and yelling at him, "You want to fight, right? You want to fight? Come on, come on." Just when the two were about to have a physical fight on the sofa, the brother started crying with his mouth pouted on the bed of the luxury RV. When the brother started crying, the sister was woken up and started crying too. Gong Yi wiped his face helplessly and looked at Huami. Huami moved her body and sat next to Gong Yi. She pushed Gong Yi with her knee. They started crying. "Look, you woke them both up. Why did you just take a nap?" Listening to Huami's tone, there was a strong sense of unwillingness. Gong Yi found it funny, so he stood up and went to coax the child. Huami, who was standing by, couldn't help but smile when she saw him. After a while, when Gong Yi had fed the two children, Huami was about to pounce on their food like a hungry tiger. Another garrison came to Gong Yi to repair and stabilize the city wall. Huami sat on the edge of the sofa, propping up one side of her face with her hand. She looked at Gong Yi with ambiguity and amusement.
Busy.
The commander is too busy. Gong Yi, who was also a little annoyed, turned around and glared at her. "Don't go to the bathroom tonight." This kind of secret interest, which seemed to be known only to two people, made Huami's mouth curl up all the time. As adults, it's normal to fight, and Huami doesn't shy away from it. It's just that she and Gong Yi are both busy now, and they both take care of the child, one during the day and the other at night. They have to work at different times and are busy with their own things, and it's not convenient to have kids fighting around them. What can I do? Just hold it in. After Gong Yi left, Huami came to the crib and looked at the two little babies who were communicating in baby language on the bed. When Huami was lying on the bed, she received a text message from Gong Yi on her phone. "Gong Yi, Hua Xiaoning, my sister's name." Huami looked at the name Hua Xiaoning, then looked at her sister's delicate and pretty face. So he typed and asked Gong Yi, "Huami, what's your brother's name?"
Gong Yi, not yet.
Let me think about it. During this period, Gong Yi spent the whole day thinking about how to name his sister. The brother hasn't thought about it carefully yet, so he just named his sister first. Huami looked at Gong Yi's text message on her phone, sighed, and then looked at her brother's frowning and cold face. She tapped her brother's nose and said with a smile, "Look at your dad, how he ignores you." Huami closed her eyes slightly for a while, and then the voice of the contractor was heard outside the door. She opened the door of the RV and heard the contractor outside say to her in a joyful tone, Miss Hua, do you want to go and see the wall I built? My wall is finished. It's only been a few days?" Huami looked at the contractor in surprise. She did not discourage the contractor's enthusiasm. She turned around, put the children in the twin stroller, and followed the contractor to see the city wall. I don't know how the contractor did it, but when the car was still far away, he saw some treasure appearing in the north of Xiangqing. There was a brilliant light coming from there, flickering in the sunlight, and it hurt my eyes even from a distance. The person driving was Hu Jing. He had foresight and had been wearing sunglasses since Huami got in the car. The contractor sat in the passenger seat and turned around to say to Huami in the back seat, "I built this wall by myself. When I was building it, I thought of my beautiful and lovely sister. So I used EX-grade cutting on this wall to make it the most dazzling diamond wall in the world, dedicated to our beautiful, generous, gentle, and kind sister." In the car, Huami touched her forehead with her hand. "What can I say about this city wall? It should be quite strong, but it is just too dazzling. It looks like a huge diamond standing in the north of Xiangqing." What could Huami say to this? Besides applauding the contractor, what else could she say? The survivors below the city wall were all filled with astonishment as they looked at the diamond city wall that had been erected overnight. Someone rubbed his eyes, pointed at a large area of bright light in front of him, and asked, "Is it my illusion? Am I dreaming? What on earth is happening here?" The survivor standing next to him had a silly expression on his face. He looked at the diamond wall for a while, then lowered his head and rubbed his eyes. Look at the diamond wall for a while. He was thinking, if he knocked a brick off the diamond wall from here and took it to Xiangqing Base, how much would it sell for? No, they couldn't enter Xiangqing Base now. The diamond wall was just above the contractor's red line. In other words, their current location is outside the Xiangqing Base and between the Yunwu City wall. This is not good news for the stranded survivors. The group of survivors trapped under the cloud wall were also looking at the diamond wall that stood up overnight in surprise. They just couldn't understand how this wall was built. It seemed that the world was becoming more and more mysterious. How could someone have such a great ability? Someone pointed at the gradually dissipating wall of mist ahead and shouted, "Oh no! The wall of mist is getting thinner and thinner. We have really been excluded from the Xiangqing Base. Look quickly, it's no use making a fuss this time." Originally, they were ready to fight to the death if Xiangqing Base insisted on expelling them, the survivors stranded in the north of Xiangqing Base, from Xiangqing Base. They would rather die in the Xiangqing Base. They had also planned to wait for the contractor's construction site to start, and then go and cause trouble, potentially killing a few people. There are so many survivors, are we really going to kill them all? That doesn't make sense. As a result, now, although they did not move, the city wall was moved a long distance inside. Some survivors beat their chests and stamped their feet, crying loudly, "What should we do now? Why is this Xiangqing Base so cruel and ruthless?" While they were crying, someone saw a group of people jumping down from the city wall. When they looked carefully, they found that it was the person who had accepted the task from the mission center. One by one, fully armed men jumped down from the city wall. Immediately, the stranded survivors came over and asked, "What's going on? Why is there a wall suddenly erected? We are not ready yet. How are we going to survive?" The Xiangqing people who were out of town on a mission looked at the stranded survivors in confusion. It sounds so pitiful to say this, but aren't the survivors outside alive and well? Look at those little oases where you can go and do something. Otherwise, didn't the Xiangqing Base send you seeds before? You can grow some fruits, vegetables, etc. Anyway, we are at the foot of the wall of Xiangqing Base. What are you worried about? Your lives will not be in any danger. In fact, the safest place is not only inside the Xiangqing Base, but also under the city wall of the Xiangqing Base. Every day, a large number of Xiangqing people who received missions from the mission center came out of the city walls, carrying supplies and weapons to go out of the city to kill zombies. No matter how many zombies there are, it is impossible to let these zombies directly kill their way to the city wall. Unless it is the Xiangqing Base, there is a real danger of the entire base being destroyed. That's why the zombie tide is so close to the Xiangqing Base. Since there is no such crisis, isn't it just as safe to live under the city wall? After saying these words, the people of Xiangqing carried their bulging backpacks of supplies and went to kill zombies to complete their mission, leaving behind a large group of stranded survivors, helpless and in a state of panic. Outside the Xiangqing Base, on the way to the East City Base, Lin Jigang finally received a call from Chen Hu. After he told Chen Hu Huami's original words, Lin Jigang was still very nervous, thinking that Chen Hu could not be that stupid. How could a big boss like him believe such a clumsy lie? In the end, Chen Hu didn't ask anything, but only said to Lin Jigang, "When can you get to the E-City base?" Lin Jigang looked at the date and said, 4 or 5 months. Chen Hu didn't say anything and hung up the phone. 4 or 5 months is enough time for Chen Hu to recruit soldiers. And it was at this time that Huami was preparing to return to the RV and wait for Gong Yi to come back and take care of the children in the evening. Chichuan quietly walked to her side and whispered, "Sister Hua, something's going on." Huami pursed her lips, tilted her head to look at Chichuan, and signaled with her eyes that Chichuan should continue. "My friend who is in charge of purchasing supplies outside told me that City F is selling a large number of energy drops recently. But we obviously don't sell energy drops anymore." There was a solemn look on Ikegawa's face. None of them knew where the energy drops in F City came from. But now this thing can not only replenish the physical strength of ordinary people, but also prolong their lives. It can also replenish the supernatural energy of those with supernatural powers, and is a panacea, like good thing in the apocalypse. Those survivors outside who have hoarded energy drops in their hands should regard the energy drops in their hands as treasures. It is absolutely impossible to sell it to City F and let City F sell it in large quantities. Huami thought for a moment. Isn't Chen Hu in City F? So Chen Hu can get a large amount of energy drops from our Xiangqing? Chi Chuan asked in surprise. He felt more and more nervous, and even revealed a hint of murderous intent on his face. "Sister Hua, do you mean that there is a trader in our Xiangqing? What kind of trader is able to transport large quantities of energy drops out of Xiangqing? He also crossed the entire zombie tide and delivered such a large amount of energy drops to Chen Hu in F City. The quantity is so large that Chen Hu can sell it in large quantities." Huami shook her head. "Don't think about the trader for now." "But..." Ikegawa hesitated. "Sister Hua, do you know that my friend told me that Chen Hu is using these energy droplets to recruit a large number of people with special abilities in the apocalypse? Should we take care of this? Otherwise, if we let this thing develop, it will become a big problem again." Huami said thoughtfully, "It doesn't have to be the energy drop. There are many other things in this apocalypse that can replenish the energy of people with special abilities." She knew that the crystal cores of zombies could replenish the energy of those with special abilities. In addition to zombie crystal cores, there is actually blood and flesh from mutated animals in the apocalypse, which can also replenish the physical strength of ordinary people and restore a little bit of the supernatural energy of the psychics. Chi Chuan scratched his head and thought for a long time before he said to Huami, "But Sister Hua, this won't work. If Chen Hu continues to use fake energy droplets to recruit people with special abilities, then the people under his control will continue to grow and develop, and sooner or later their power will be greater than ours." Ikegawa is a little worried now. After all, the Xiangqing base has now stopped allowing outside survivors to enter the Xiangqing base. All survivors who want to get close to Xiangqing base can only move under the city wall of Xiangqing base. This means that the Xiangqing base is actually invisibly rejecting the surrender of many, many people with special abilities. Since these psychics are not taken seriously in the Xiangqing base, they will naturally turn to Chen Hu, who has a large number of fake energy drops. Huami smiled and said to Chi Chuan, "You don't have to worry about this. If things develop in this way, Chen Hu's route of development will win by numbers. The development route of our Xiangqing base is to win the world with quality.
Don't worry about this."
No matter what, their psychics are not as high level as ours. That's for sure. Huami doesn't need to explain so much to Chi Chuan now. I just briefly popularized the side effects of the zombie crystal core. The crystal core of a zombie contains a lot of impurities, which will make the body of the mutant become abnormally strong and thick. Emotions can also become uncontrollable, causing immeasurable consequences. From the very beginning, Huami had no intention of capturing all the psychics in the Xiangqing base. This is impossible. She was also prepared for this. Sooner or later, the entire world would be divided. Sooner or later, the psychic will know the function of the crystal core. So the most urgent task now is to lure Chen Hu out as soon as possible. The secret that zombie crystal cores can be absorbed by people with special powers can no longer be kept secret. It will definitely cause a large number of people with special abilities to absorb the crystal cores of zombies. But what's the use of that? The zombie crystal core itself is full of impurities. The more zombie crystal cores a psychic absorbs, the more difficult it will be for them to improve their abilities in the future. However, all along, the psychics who only absorbed energy droplets received energy supplements that were extremely pure and full of essential energy from the very beginning. Pure energy has only benefits and no harm to the body of the psychic, and the speed of improving the psychic's abilities will also be faster. Just look at the Xiangqing base now. You will see that there are a large number of people with special powers, and each of them has very powerful powers. Huami raised her hand and patted Qi Chuan's shoulder, so when we look at the problem, we have to look at the future. If you think about it in the future, you will feel better. She understood how anxious the people who followed her in the Xiangqing base were. The world outside is changing every day. But precisely because of this, we cannot take big steps. After comforting Qi Chuan, Huami got into her luxury RV and waited for Gong Yi to come back and take over taking care of the children. She gave the two children a bath in the bathroom of the RV, and then half lying on the bed played with the two children. Just wait for the door outside the RV to start making noises. Huami immediately stood up and looked at Gong Yi with a smile, who was wearing a garrison combat uniform and carrying two machetes on his back. She was stunned and asked, "What are you doing?" Gong Yi raised his head. "I'll go with you to the public toilet so that you don't run into my garrisons getting up when you come back the next morning." Huami opened her mouth slightly, looking very surprised. She suddenly asked, "If you follow me to the public toilet, who will take care of the child?" Gong Yi stood in front of Huami, with his hands on his hips, looking very relaxed. Of course, we followed their parents to the public toilet. Don't you see, the children outside the city wall are only this old, but they have already started killing zombies. Gong Yi gestured to Huami that he was not lying. He stayed at the Yunwu city wall every day, watching the survivors who were struggling hard below the wall. During this time, Gong Yi has been thinking about this problem. Their generation is the first generation of survivors. They have made huge sacrifices and barely established a base and consolidated the oasis for human survivors. But what about the next generation? What about the second generation of survivors? What Gong Yi saw were those children who were intercepted outside the wall of Xiangqing base. Teenagers have already followed their parents, chopping off the heads of zombies and digging out crystal cores from their brains. The younger children, who were not as strong, helped their parents collect supplies. These children have grown up to be very independent. But how long has it been since the end of the world? It's only been a year since the end of the world. Look at the children in the Xiangqing base. Each one of them is fair and clean. Gong Yi had really thought about it carefully, and he couldn't educate his children like this. Although he wanted to be a very, very great father and build a very, very solid fortress for his children. But no matter how strong the armor is in this world, it is not as strong as one's own. So, doesn't Huami particularly love public toilets? The whole family went to the public toilet. Huami looked at Gong Yi exaggeratedly and asked, "Are you serious? Are you taking your daughter and son out with you?" Gong Yi nodded with a resolute look in his eyes. "Take both children out. No one can be left behind. I'm going to start with early education now." Huami has always seemed much calmer than Gong Yi when it comes to her two babies. She raises her children in a free-range manner. She lets her children grow up to be what they are, and everything else depends on the children's luck. But Gong Yi is different. Gong Yi is very anxious. He seems to have seen what will happen many years in the future from now on. What is truly good for children is not to protect them, but to give them the ability to protect themselves. Huami scratched her hair and said helplessly, "But aren't you the commander of Xiangqing? After you leave, what will happen to Xiangqing Base North?" Gong Yi glanced at her sideways. "Isn't there already a diamond wall? What is there to be afraid of? I want him to build all the walls of Xiangqing Base a little higher. Do I need my mental power to do something that is not related to my major? To be honest, it is a waste to use Gong Yi's mental power to build the city wall." Huami thought about it and felt that what Gong Yi said was right. Okay, fine, that's it. Let's go, take some paper. Our whole family is going to the public toilet. Lin Jigang, who had been in the small safe zone for several days, finally waited for Huami to come back. But this time he looked at Gong Yi, who had flashed out from behind Huami, pushing a stroller for twins. Lin Jigang widened his eyes in surprise. He pointed at Gong Yi and asked Huami, Commander Gong has come out too. Why did he bring the two children with him? It's too dangerous outside. Huami waved her hand. Your Commander Gong said that from now on, his two children will receive early education. So let's not worry about it and just fight our way out normally. After saying that, Huami looked at the small safe zone created by Lin Jigang. Although the light in this safe zone was dim and small, but Lin Jigang filled all the holes that could be filled in the power grid. The power grid was also built very well by Lin Jigang. Even compared with most professional technicians who build power grids, Lin Jigang's power grid was more perfect and his work was more meticulous. Huami couldn't help but admire Dr. Lin. You are setting up the power grid here with the same standards as you would for performing surgery on a human. Lin Jigang's face flushed. He raised his hand and scratched his hair. His expression even had a hint of shyness. I can't do anything, but I thought about what you told me before, leaving a safe zone here. Maybe it will save many survivors trapped in the zombie tide. Whenever I think of this, I want to make the power grid in the safe zone more secure. This is the same principle as being a doctor and saving lives. Doctors are also there to save lives and heal the wounded. Now Lin Jigang is in the zombie tide, and he has not encountered any injured people. But what he is doing now can save many people in the future. So he had to do this matter more carefully. Huami took a close look at Lin Jigang. She didn't say anything. She just pointed at Gong Yi, who was pushing a baby carriage behind her, and said, We have found a good helper here now. We can get to East City much faster. If you think building a small safe zone can save lives, you can develop in this direction after you finish your work. As he spoke, Gong Yi stepped forward with a stern face, stuffed his brother into Huami's arms, and carefully held his sister as if she were a piece of tofu, and said, It's okay. All the zombies outside have been cleared. After saying that, he held his sister, turned on the electric fence, and walked out of the small safe zone. Huami winked at Lin Jigang and said, See, that's what she said. She found a good helper this time, a big hand. Deshuzi advanced all the way to City. When it was dark, Lin Jigang, at the instruction of Huami, called Chen Hu again. He told Chen Hu that the plan could be advanced, and it would only take a month for them to reach the outskirts of Xiangqing and enter the territory of E-City. Chen Hu asked in surprise on the other end of the phone, What's going on? Didn't you say it would take at least half a year? Why does it only take a month now? Lin Jigang looked at Huami. Huami lip-synced to Lin Jigang. So Lin Jigang understood and said to Chen Hu, I met two very powerful survivors, and they brought me out directly from outside the Xiangqing base. So the plan can be advanced, and I don't want my father to continue to suffer at your hands. Chen Hu laughed on the other end of the phone. Don't worry, your father still has everything except his tongue. In this world, there are some things you can say, and some things you can't say. I think it's good that your father has lost his tongue. That's it. Go to the East City base first, and wait for me there. I will contact you later. After saying that, Chen Hu hung up Lin Jigang's phone. He did not say when he would arrive outside the East City base. He was like an old fox, playing a psychological game with Lin Jigang. Lin Jigang couldn't do anything to Chen Hu. Huami and Gong Yi looked at each other, then looked at the sky outside, which had already darkened. Huami said, That's it for today. Let's sleep here first. Since Gong Yi no longer had to repair the city wall, they could now spend the night outside with their children. This time they found a small safe zone, an abandoned building. The building is spacious and drafty everywhere. However, because Huami and Gong Yi had two children with them, Huami was not planning to sleep outside to rest. An abandoned building with leaks everywhere is better than nothing. She unloaded a luxurious RV in the lobby of the building, and Gong Yi got into the RV with his brother and sister. Lin Jigang, who was standing at the side, looked at the RV that suddenly appeared in surprise, then looked at Huami and asked, Is this RV the space in the novel? In his spare time, Lin Jigang actually read 1 or 2 novels. I roughly know that in novels about cultivating immortals, there are storage rings and the like. He guessed that Huami might have similar black technology in her hands that could be used as a space. Huami didn't explain much to Lin Jigang. He just nodded. In fact, her ability is much more complex and advanced than a simple space that can only store things. She placed a small RV next to her luxury RV and said to Lin Jigang, "I'll lend you this RV." Lin Jigang waved his hand. "I'm busy tonight. I still have to repair the power grid here." After saying that, he took out the electric fence from his back with familiarity and set it up 1 by 1 on the holes in the building that was leaking air everywhere. Huami looked at Lin Jigang's diligent look and said to his back, "Actually, you don't have to take it so seriously. Dr. Lin, this isn't your job anyway." She didn't expect Lin Jigang to be so demanding of perfection. Lin Jigang just turned around and smiled at Huami, raised his hand to wipe the sweat from his forehead, and continued to work diligently to build his power grid. Seeing this, Huami stopped trying to persuade him. Everyone has their own aspirations, and people in the end times don't just live for the sake of living. People in the end times also have their own dreams and things they insist on doing. She left Lin Jigang busy, got up and entered the RV, watching Gong Yi skillfully practicing raising his head and turning over with his brother and sister. Gong Yi held a bell in his hand and spun it around his brother and sister's heads. When he saw Huami enter the RV, Gong Yi said, "You seem to be very familiar with that, Dr. Lin." Huami glanced at Gong Yi in confusion. "We're not that familiar with each other. We've only known each other for a short time."
Gong Yi said
Just when Huami thought he had nothing to say and was about to take a rest, Gong Yi suddenly said sourly, "You and I haven't known each other for long, and you already have 2 children." For a moment, Huami didn't understand what Wang Yi meant. She blinked her fox eyes and looked at Gong Yi. "So, what did Gong Yi want to say?"
Gong Yi snorted koldi.
"Go to sleep. Only when you get enough sleep will you have the energy to help them repair the power grid." Huami still didn't understand what was wrong with Gong Yi. She even nodded and said to Gong Yi seriously, "Dr. Lin is a good person. His power grid is really well built." Gong Yi ignored her this time and didn't even look at her. When Huami climbed onto the bed at the front of the luxury RV and lay down to sleep, she was half asleep and half awake. She only felt that Gong Yi turned off the lights in the RV and put the 2 children on the big bed at the back of the car. He coaxed the 2 children to sleep and then looked at Huami in the dark for a while. Then, Gong Yi also climbed onto the bed and rubbed against Huami's side. Huami turned over, with her back to Gong Yi, and said in a daze, "What?"
"What?"
Gong Yi put his hand on Huami's waist and pulled her into his arms. Before Huami could react, Gong Yi paused and said in a serious voice, "Don't move. There is a group of survivors coming towards us." Huami turned around and looked at Gong Yi in the dim light inside the RV. By this time, she had fully sobered up and asked, "What should we do? A team of very powerful guys? They come with bad intentions?" Gong Yi didn't answer, but rolled over and lay on top of Huami. "It's nothing. It will probably take several hours for the group of survivors to reach us. The zombies around here have been cleared away by Gong Yi's mental power, and the team of survivors is still far away from the ruined building where Gong Yi is. And behind them, there was also a group of zombies following. So by the time they arrived here, it was enough time for Gong Yi to teach Huami a lesson." There was a rustling sound on the bed. In the distance, shrouded in darkness, Hu Yanxiang led Chu Yimin and several other men who followed him out of the Yi City base. They mixed in with a team of survivors, killing zombies along the way and shaking off the zombies' pursuit and blockade. They all had tired faces. After finally finding a place to rest, Hu Yanxiang kicked Chu Yimin. "Go ahead and see if there are any zombies ahead." Chu Yimin lowered her head, her face and body covered with scars. She did not dare to disobey Hu Yanxiang's words, so she stood up tremblingly, left the team, and went forward to explore the way. Next to Hu Yanxiang, a man lowered his voice and asked, "Brother Xiang, didn't you say you would take Chu Yimin back to the Yi City base and make her the second in command of the Yi City base? What if she goes out to explore the way now and dies ahead?" Hu Yanxiang looked at the man who said this with some resentment. We must first deal with the present situation well before we can think about the future. We are not sure whether we can return to East City alive now. It was so unlucky that during this period, Hu Yanxiang didn't know what had brought him bad luck. According to his original plan, he wanted to make Chu Yimin his own, tame Chu Yimin, and then take Chu Yimin back to the East City base. He wanted to be Chu Shiheng's brother-in-law. But the plan was only half successful, as Chu Yimin had now become very obedient in front of him. If Hu Yanxiang brings Chu Yimin in this state back to the East City base, I believe Chu Shiheng will not accept it, but he will have no choice but to accept it. But just as he and his brothers were walking towards the East City base with Chu Yimin, they were caught in a wave of zombies. As a result, they seemed to be stuck in this quagmire, unable to escape from the flow of zombies, no matter what they did. In the end, he was completely conquered by the zombie tide and couldn't escape, no matter what. Time was delayed little by little. Now Hu Yanxiang is so annoyed with this woman Chu Yimin. She has no skills at all, and yet consumes supplies every day. If they had not encountered another team of survivors who were preparing to enter the zombie tide and head to the Xiangqing base, Hu Yanxiang didn't want to support Chu Yimin at all. He just wanted to throw this woman away and feed her to the zombies. Amid the roars of zombies in the distance, Hu Yanxiang looked at the captain of the team that had climbed up this time. This captain was a man of good skills and abilities, and he led a very capable team on his own. There was also a woman in the team, who was delicate-looking and looked naive. Perhaps feeling Hu Yanxiang's scrutiny, the captain in camouflage uniform turned around and glanced at Hu Yanxiang. Hu Yanxiang immediately asked the captain with a smile, "Captain Zhao, why don't you go to the East City base? I heard that the East City base has been developing very well recently, and many survivors are running to the East City base." Hu Yanxiang's words immediately drew ridicule from Captain Zhao. Captain Zhao said, "How many years ago was this news? I'm afraid you don't know it yet. Strange things are happening frequently in the East City base. Many members of the Chu family in the East City base are hiring bodyguards at high prices to send them to the Xiang City base or F City." When Hu Yanxiang received the news, he was stunned and a little bit unbelievable. During this period of time, when they and Chu Yimin were trapped in the zombie tide, the supplies they could find became very few. In this zombie tide, with so many survivors walking around every day, there is no shortage of capable people. These survivors will take away all the supplies from the zombie tide in advance. So the cell phones of Hu Yanxiang and others were out of power. I have no idea what happened at the East City base. Captain Zhao saw the shocked expressions on Hu Yanxiang and the others' faces and said, "The survivors you mentioned earlier went to the East City base in large numbers because no strange species had appeared in the East City base yet. Now that the survivors are not going there, who knows what they will encounter?" Nowadays, everyone with a little bit of knowledge knows that a monster appeared outside the East City base. It looks a bit like a human, but has a tail and runs very fast. This monster is much faster than zombies. When an ordinary person faces a zombie, he still has time to react and kill the zombie. But when ordinary people encounter this kind of monster, they don't even have time to react before being knocked down by it. What's even more terrifying is that this monster seems to be untouchable. If you are bitten by such a monster, you may very likely become such a monster. So the talents of the East City base ran around everywhere, all wanting to leave East City. Captain Zhao described the tragic situation of the East City base to Hu Yanxiang and others. Chu Shiheng had been so loud about building a city wall before, but how could that be considered a city wall? It's just a barbed wire fence, and it doesn't even have electricity. Who can it stop? No one knows how many people are left in the East City base now. These people are huddled inside the base, living in the former prison of the East City base, and dare not go out. Whoever dares to go out will die. As soon as Captain Zhao finished speaking, Chu Yimin ran back quickly. She looked at Hu Yanxiang with fear, as if she was afraid that Hu Yanxiang would get angry, and said in a low voice, I noticed something was happening ahead." Hu Yanxiang was furious and slapped Chu Yimin in the face. He said irritably, "Can't you speak louder? Who can hear what you're saying if you speak so softly? It's like the hum of a mosquito. Look at him." He pointed at the delicate woman in Captain Zhao's team and said to Chu Yimin, "Look at how well she behaves as a woman. You are not like me. So unpleasant. Chu Yimin felt very aggrieved. She covered the swollen half of her face and stood aside without saying a word. Of course, she also wanted to please men like that delicate woman. She wasn't such a timid person before. However, she was scared by Hu Yanxiang's beating, so how could she still act coquettishly in front of Hu Yanxiang? Now Hu Yanxiang was irritated when he saw her. The woman in Captain Zhao's team glanced at Chu Yimin with contempt, as if she disdained Chu Yimin's servility. She didn't say anything, turned around and leaned aside to rest. Then I heard Hu Yanxiang yelling at Chu Yimin in annoyance. What's the matter? Tell me now. Chu Yimin quickly quickened her speaking speed. I didn't see any zombies ahead, not even one. When she said this, Hu Yanxiang and Captain Zhao looked at each other. Captain Zhao seemed to be very experienced in dealing with zombies. He immediately said, "It looks like there's a superpower ahead. Let's go straight over there." This news excited everyone in Captain Zhao's team, as well as Hu Yanxiang and others. Nowadays, a psychic who can kill such a large area of zombies in a zombie tide must have a very high level of psychic ability. In fact, the ability levels of the psychics coming out of Xiangqing are generally a little higher. Everyone immediately packed up their luggage and ran all the way to the small safe zone built by Lin Jigang. When everyone arrived in front of the ruin building, they saw Lin Jigang building an electric fence on the windows of the ruins. The woman in Captain Zhao's team, whose name was Su Ruyan, shouted loudly, "Quick, look, there is a safe zone." It turns out that someone really built a safe zone in the zombie tide outside the Xiangqing base. It seems that those people we met before were not lying. Such people are often active in the zombie tide outside the Xiangqing base. They hunt zombies in groups and obtain the crystal cores inside the zombies' heads. Then he took the crystal core and went to the oasis outside the Xiangqing base to exchange daily necessities with the Xiangqing people who came out of the city to complete missions. This gradually formed a profession, so these survivors who killed zombies and obtained crystal cores would also share what they had with each other. Within this month, many survivors said that they found someone building a safe zone outside the Xiangqing base. There are a small amount of energy drops, food, and water in the safe zone. These supplies that keep people alive are secondary. The most important thing is to build a safe zone. The power grids in those small safe zones are all electrified. When the survivors walking in the zombie tide are extremely tired, they can enter these safe zones and have a good sleep. It is currently known that several small safe zones have been built and spread among the survivors. Captain Zhao and Su Ruyan did not expect that there was a small safe zone not far from them. Everyone suddenly became excited and ran towards the small safe zone, while trying to shake off the small group of zombies following them. Hu Yanxiang and Chu Yimin, who were following behind Captain Zhao, followed closely behind Captain Zhao and others, fearing that they would be locked outside the safe zone by Captain Zhao and others. After everyone ran to the front of the power grid, someone took a look. The power grid has sealed off the ruins 360 degrees without any blind spots. There is electricity on the grid. Hu Yanxiang immediately looked at Chu Yimin. There is electricity. Hurry up and figure out how we can get in. Chu Yimin took 2 steps forward, walked weakly towards the ruins, and chatted with Lin Jigang in the window for a few words. Lin Jigang generously told Chu Yimin that everyone behind Chu Yimin could enter the small safe zone. Chu Yimin then hurried back to inform Hu Yanxiang and others that they could enter. Jigang inside immediately cut off the power supply to the power grid at the entrance. Everyone rushed to open the gate of the electric fence and entered the small safe zone. Only then did I realize that there were still people in this small safe zone. Lin Jigang looked at this group of survivors who suddenly appeared and frowned slightly. There were so many men, so why did they send Chu Yimin, a woman, to negotiate about entering the safe zone? However, before Lin Jigang could speak, Hu Yanxiang asked, "Where's the food? Where is the food and water in this small safe zone?" They are in urgent need of these supplies, so their first reaction after entering the small safe zone is to look for food, water, and energy drops. Lin Jigang frowned again and looked at Hu Yanxiang. Hu Yanxiang didn't seem to notice Lin Jigang's dissatisfied expression. Maybe he noticed it, but he didn't care. Chu Yimin pointed carefully at several large packages piled in the corner of the ruined building. Brother Xiang, look, there are supplies here. Hu Yanxiang and several men behind him rushed forward. Grab those big packages first. Lin Jigang felt very disgusted with Hu Yanxiang. He stepped forward and said to Hu Yanxiang and others who had opened the package and were rummaging around in it, "This is our stuff. We put it here, and we haven't planned to use it yet." The several large packages left there were actually what Huami planned to leave in the small safe zone. But now they have not left, nor have they left these supplies behind. Since they are still here, these supplies should belong to Huami. Hu Yanxiang turned around and pushed Lin Jigang, causing him to fall to the ground. "What do you mean by yours? Don't think I don't know. This is what Xiangqing Base puts in every safe zone to rescue survivors." Hu Yanxiang pointed to a flower printed on the package. Most of the supplies flowing out of the Xiangqing Base have the same flower printed on them. Everyone in the entire apocalypse knows it. Therefore, the supplies that Lin Jigang mentioned were actually the rescue supplies used by the Xiangqing Base to rescue survivors. Since it is used to rescue survivors, it is equivalent to rescuing Hu Yanxiang and several others. Hu Yanxiang and the other men nodded hurriedly, took out the energy water drops from the big package, unscrewed the bottle caps, and drank it all up. Lin Jigang sighed inwardly and said seriously, "These energy drops should be mixed with jelly stones. Then place it in the generator so that it can be connected to the power grid when you sleep at night. All survivors who enter the small safe zone can have a good rest in the safe zone. You can't drink these energy drops." In response, Hu Yanxiang punched Lin Jigang in the face, knocking him to the ground. "We are exhausted outside, and now you want us not to drink the energy drops. How are we going to recover our strength? How do we fight zombies when we get out?" Lin Jigang was stunned after being beaten, with blood flowing from the corner of his mouth. He looked at the people standing in front of him. Not only Hu Yanxiang and others, but even Captain Zhao and Su Ruyan's team looked at Lin Jigang with indifference, without offering a helping hand at all. After Hu Yanxiang and his companions stuffed food into their mouths and filled their stomachs. Only then did Hu Yanxiang turn around and look at Captain Zhao with a fawning expression. He handed a box of biscuits to Captain Zhao and said with a wry smile, "Look at me. I'm really starving. Captain Zhao, here are a lot of supplies." Look at Hu Yanxiang's face. He is a man who flatters the powerful, bullies the weak, and is afraid of the strong. Lin Jigang couldn't help but feel nauseous. Captain Zhao raised his hand and blocked the supplies pushed by Hu Yanxiang. He said indifferently, "No need. We have the supplies. Just give us the energy drops." In terms of numbers, Captain Zhao's team has more people than Hu Yanxiang's team. In terms of ability, there are several people with special abilities in the captain's team. In Hu Yanxiang's team, there were only 5 men and 1 woman, Chu Yimin, and they were all ordinary people. So during the few days we've known each other, I've always been Captain Zhao's men, the main force in fighting zombies. It was already quite a struggle for the people in Hu Yanxiang's team to just keep up with Captain Zhao and his men's escape and avoid being chased and blocked by the zombies. Therefore, in the past few days, the supplies found were first divided up by Captain Zhao and his men. Only the remaining scraps that Captain Zhao and his men did not like were left to Hu Yanxiang and his men. This time, Captain Zhao wants to take away all the energy drops. Hu Yanxiang smiled awkwardly, looking flattering. That's right. Captain Zhao is so capable. He must have a lot of supplies. After saying that, his eyes rolled around and looked at Su Ruyan. No one knew what Hu Yanxiang was planning. He just smiled at Su Ruyan in a flattering way. "Ms. Su, come and take a look. These energy drops are all for you." She is the person in Captain Zhao's team who is in charge of counting and receiving supplies. Su Ruyan glanced at Hu Yanxiang with a cold and arrogant look, then turned her head away. "Pack it up and send it back to me." Then she looked at the luxury RV inside the ruined building. No one knew who was inside this luxury RV, and there had been no movement. Lin Jigang got up from the ground and said to Hu Yanxiang with disgust, "Although these supplies are used to rescue survivors, we cannot allow you to waste them like this. Besides, most of you are ordinary people, and generally you don't need so many energy drops. If you can use the energy drops to generate electricity, all of you will just need to sleep here peacefully for 1 night, and you will be able to recover your strength. Lin Jigang has already calculated this account for all the survivors. He hoped that Hu Yanxiang and others would not be so selfish, as there were not many energy droplets here. If energy drops are drunk by someone else, only that person can gain the benefits of restoring physical strength and replenishing supernatural energy. But if they use the energy drops to generate electricity, then all the survivors in the small safe zone will be able to sleep peacefully. The tired survivors will feel extremely happy if they can have a good sleep. At this time, Lin Jigang was still trying to reason with Hu Yanxiang. Yes, even after being beaten like this, he was still prepared to reason with the bad guys. But no one present supported Lin Jigang. Even Captain Zhao and Su Ruian showed sarcastic smiles towards Lin Jigang. They took 2 steps back as if they were watching a monkey trick, watching how Lin Jigang would make a fool of himself. Hu Yanxiang exchanged glances with several men in his team. A man walked towards Lin Jigang with a grim smile on his face. He clenched his fist and said to Lin Jigang, from the looks of it, "You are the one who has been building the safe zone and placing supplies in the zombie tide." Lin Jigang chose not to answer these men because he saw some ill intentions on the face of the man opposite him. He is not an idiot, he is not that blind. Lin Jigang took 2 steps back and asked cautiously, "What do you want to do?" The man reached out and grabbed Lin Jigang's collar. "Ha ha ha ha, after being unlucky for so long, we finally caught a fat sheep. Your Xiangqing base is really good. You have fooled us survivors around. Didn't they say they were going to close the Xiangqing base and not allow anyone to enter it? Then you are sending supplies outside? This kind of hypocritical behavior is really despicable." Another man stepped forward. "Since you have come out of the Xiangqing base and are responsible for replenishing the supplies in the small safety zones, you must have a large amount of supplies to allocate. Well, you go back to the Xiangqing base now and bring us a large amount of supplies. We'll be waiting for you in this small safe zone." They believe this is another people-friendly policy of the Xiangqing base. It's just like the management system before the end of the world, which often came up with various policies to benefit the people. Therefore, Lin Jigang was sent by the management of a Xiangqing base to specialize in the construction of small safety zones and the placement of materials in small safety zones. If this is the case, then they can capture a commissioner and make good use of the Xiangqing base's policy to benefit the people. From now on, they will not have to worry about food, drink, and energy water drops. When Lin Jigang heard this, even Dr. Lin, who was always gentle and known for his gentle temper, couldn't help but get angry. He asked angrily, "Why? Why should I return to the Xiangqing base and deliver a large amount of materials from the Xiangqing base to you?" Yes, why? He's not a fool. Could it be that he wouldn't run away if he returned to the Xiangqing base? Why would you stupidly take supplies from the Xiangqing base and deliver them to Hu Yanxiang and the others? Hu Yanxiang grabbed Chu Yimin's hair with ease, and the expression on his face looked very distorted. "I know people like you. You will never watch innocent people die in front of you." Chu Yimin let out a scream of awe. "I also heard Hu Yanxiang threatening Lin Jigang. I think you are a kind-hearted person. If you don't do what we say, you will see this woman. We will use thousands and tens of thousands of methods to torture her." The man next to him also joined in and threatened Lin Jigang. "You can't even imagine the ways we torture women, dear." Lin Jigang was stunned. He did not expect Hu Yanxiang to be so despicable and shameless as to use his own woman to threaten him. So Lin Jigang said with a cold face, "I don't care what you say. This is completely irrational, and I won't do anything that doesn't make sense." Then he looked at Chu Yimin again. Chu Yimin's face was covered with wounds. With Lin Jigang's many years of medical experience, he could tell at a glance that Chu Yimin must have been slapped frequently by Hu Yanxiang, or even suffered worse beatings. He frowned and said to Hu Yanxiang, "You should not be like this. If everyone is as selfish as you, no one will be able to survive. It's already very difficult for humans to survive in the apocalypse. If everyone pockets all the supplies and uses their women to threaten others, all the good people will be killed by you. All those who survived are bad guys, and your own living environment will become quite difficult." After listening to his righteous words, not only Hu Yanxiang but also Captain Zhao and Su Ruian had mocking expressions on their faces.
I don't know how saintly this Lin Jigang is.
Despite his stupid personality, he is still alive today, thanks to the good protection provided by the Xiangqing base. Hu Yanxiang reached out impatiently and tore off Chu Yimin's clothes. She tore her tattered clothes into rags. The scars on Chu Yimin's body were completely exposed to everyone. Su Ruyan, who is also a woman, looked at Chu Yimin with even more contempt. She seemed to have no empathy for Chu Yimin's pain at all. I just feel that for a woman to live a lowly and pathetic life like Chu Yimin, that is pretty useless. Looking at Hu Yanxiang again, he has no intention of respecting Chu Yimin at all. Chu Yimin screamed, covered her chest with both hands, and looked at Lin Jigang pleadingly. Save me, please promise him, I beg you, please promise him if you don't agree to his request, he will humiliate me in some way. Lin Jigang was also angered by Hu Yanxiang's amazing move. His lips trembled, and he pointed at Hu Yanxiang's shaking hand. How could you be like this? Why could you treat a woman like this? Don't you know that this is a humiliation to her? Are you still a human being? In Lin Jigang's mind, bullying a woman is wrong, especially bullying a defenseless woman. What's more, Hu Yanxiang's method is simply outrageous. Lin Jigang shook his head angrily, clenching his fists. His neck thickened from anger.